Listen up, Gotham.
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Hiya, Buttons. It's me, Harley Quinn.
This is Batman.
This is Robin.
Tune into the Bat Fanatic podcast.
The Bat Fan Addict Podcast.
The Bat Fanatic Podcast.
The Bat Fanatic Podcast with Sammy Warm Hands.
With Sammy Warm Hands.
The Bat Fan Addict Podcast. Bat Fan Addict Podcast.
Although, Sam, you might think about changing the name.
Hey everybody, it's the Dark Knight of Rap, Sammy Warm Hands, and this is the Bat Fanatic Podcast. As always, I'll be joined by my co-hosts, Ben and Evan, and this will be the second to last time that you hear this trio together. That's right, it is nearly the end of season 3, and Ben and Evan will be moving on. So enjoy this 3-hour jam-packed discussion. I left all the tangents and discussions about the influence, the impact of the film and the controversy and all of our other interests. It's all here. Just a good long episode about the controversial Todd Phillips, Joaquin Phoenix film, Joker. This is going to be an epic one because there's a lot to talk about in this movie.
The Swamp Thing book?
Yes.
It's a lot to digest.
The Swamp Thing movie.
At
That's
least
what we
20
watched.
pages.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, from the 80s with Wes Craven, who, strangely enough...
What?
Yeah.
What?
Is it Adrienne Barbeau or something?
Oh, yeah.
She's also the voice of Catwoman in the animated series.
Huh.
Very interesting.
I know about her because there's this episode in C-Lab 2021 where they're having this whole thing about these like great robot wars and will they transition their bodies into robot bodies, you know, so that they're on the winning side when the robots come and blah, blah, blah. And Captain Murphy is saying something about like, but could my robot body be a beautiful woman? and he calls himself an Adrienne Barbeau bot.
That's good. That's good.
I don't think I could even picture this person's face. Only Captain Murphy's stupid mug.
She's the not quite love interest, but she's like the main woman in Escape from New York.
Oh,
Okay.
She was
I
like
haven't seen that in
kind of a sex symbol of like the 70s and 80s. She's in Cannonball Run. There's a famous scene where like they get pulled over by the cop. She's like, "Wait, I got this." And she unzips her cat suit to reveal her cleavage. And then the cop comes up and it's like a super busty woman. And she's like, "Okay, so license and registration, please."
Yeah.
that's funny.
I don't suppose you have a driver's license tucked down in there somewhere, do you?
Yes, officer.
I've been bested by your bust.
Wow, I'm going to start saying that anytime it ends a little too early.
Yeah.
So anyway, I made the post online today that this will be our last 2 episodes that we're recording. We're going to talk more about that on the final one because we'll have more time. I'm excited to do this with you guys, and it's been really fun. So thanks for being here. Ben?
Why did we end on Edgelord Joker?
Evan?
Hey.
Okay, cool. I tried.
Wow.
Ben kind
hi.
of derailed us with that question
Hello.
there. Yeah, but it's because it's your favorite. Okay. No, part of the reason that
Are you being blackmailed?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, what's...
is because there's a copycat of the Joker, and he knows where I live. No, when
Is he here in the room with us now?
when I was doing the Take 92 podcast, my first one, which is interviewing musicians, I did an episode, as I mentioned before, a long time ago, reviewing the Justice League movie when that came out. And then later I did one with my friend Brian Stevenson reviewing Joker when it came out. And I was like, I gotta stop doing this. I love talking about it, but I gotta stop doing this on my music show. It doesn't make any sense. And so that was kind of the first thing that planted the seed for me to consider doing this. And it wasn't until a couple months later when I went to the convention in San Antonio and saw Michael Keaton, and that ended up being our episode 0, was his Q&A session. I put that bootleg recording up, and then we started. While I was in the airport coming home from that, I wrote 50 episodes I thought we could do. And to me, this is just kind of a full circle moment of like, man, I really got to do that with the guys though, because there's so many fun things to talk about. So That's why we're
this
here
is a really fun movie.
now. Oh, yeah. It's a neat
There's a ton of fun stuff to talk about.
The fun and excitement we have for Batman makes him special.
I mean, there's a lot of laughter in it, right?
Yeah.
You could say it's a...
We all have a condition, really.
I have a few. All right. Joker, 2019, directed by Todd Phillips, written by Todd Phillips and Scott Silver, who's also done some of my other favorite movies like The Fighter and 8 Mile.
Todd Phillips, he's like old school.
Todd Phillips is old school, The Hangover. It is so impressive to me that guy pulled this off because
did he do The Big Short before this?
That's Adam McKay.
Okay, never mind.
So Adam McKay transitioned into The Big Short and Vice and Don't Look Up, and he's brilliantly done this. But I feel like a lot of times you'll watch a movie that's a drama and it looks like a comedy director shot this movie or something. It's like it doesn't have the emotional, I don't know, like it's just, it's missing some of the moments that make you really feel what the characters are going through. It's got this sort of very practical, utilitarian camera placement where it's like they're used to doing a multicam thing where coverage is the only thing that matters, you know? And I feel like I can generally spot those from a mile away, and this movie is not that at all. So it's a huge accomplishment, really, just for that alone. Not
from the director of Old School.
Yeah.
I mean, a harrowing tale of mental
Kevin
instability.
Smith talk about these big budget superhero movies, and he'll have his critiques, but he'll be the first one to say, like, look, don't put me in the same sentence as the Russo brothers or something. Like, I could never do what they do. I am also a director in name only. I do not do what these people can do. And I think that that's something that's important to realize as an artist. You know, I separate myself from, sure, I've been playing guitar for, 30 years or something, but I'm not a Joe Satriani kind of player. Sure. I'm not a Ben Polanski kind of player, right? I'm a songwriter. You know, you kind of know what your thing is. And so for a guy to take this sort of leap is really impressive to me.
Yeah, I appreciate if that's confidence. I think that's rad. The whole thought that you don't really have any reason to, other than just believing in yourself, you don't really have a basis for, like, I could probably do that. You know, like,
you've seen Old School, right? You know what I'm capable of.
I can make a movie.
The cameo with Snoop Dogg, come on.
Yeah, I just think that's really cool. And I wonder what pushed him in that direction in the first place.
Yeah, it really seems like a passion project for him. And I want to talk about his influences and stuff, but let me first finish this opening part, which is starring Joaquin Phoenix, Robert De Niro, Zazie Beetz, and Francis Conroy, with some amazing supporting actors like Mark Maron, Bill Camp, Shea Wiggum. It goes on and on. There's just a great bench of talent on this. And music composed by, and I'm sorry already, but Hildur Guðnadóttir.
I can't see it, so I don't know how you're mispronouncing it.
Sounds right.
I own the soundtrack, the score from this movie, and it's wonderful.
That main theme is really nice.
I don't know if that's like a cello or something, but like the really low strings are awesome in this.
There's a lot of really ominous, moody kind of music in it.
From the jump. Because like the very first scene has those like slow drums. They almost feel like a battle thing, like the storm is coming. Like, dun, 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 he's just wandering around, not doing anything.
To me, it's very Johnny Greenwood's score for There Will Be Blood. Like when I first saw this movie, I immediately thought of that. It's funny too, because both of those movies I saw in theaters with my wife when they came out, and we tend to love a lot of the same movies, and she hates both of those fucking movies because they're super creepy, violent movies, and the music is so tense and like
the whole time.
It's unsettling, you know?
To the point where if there's ever, I can't even remember if there are, but in movies like that, if there's ever a scene where something good is happening, you're like, this isn't going to happen, right? Because this whole movie so far has just been feeling bad.
Yeah, this must be a daydream.
Or somebody like a car's about to hit someone or...
So on that note, my first experience with this movie was, of all things, for our 20th anniversary, finally took my wife to Hawaii, which had been a long time dream of hers. And I don't like flying, and I especially didn't like the idea of flying over the ocean for quite a while.
Just to be in the sun.
Well, that too. Yeah, so we did it. It was a big deal. You know, we're finally there, and we're having a great time, and then this movie comes out, and I know that because I follow all these fan pages and whatever, I'm like, this movie will be spoiled for me if we don't see it this weekend. And so I kind of twisted her arm and we went. You know, again, she loves going to the movie premieres with me, but not in the middle of our 20-year vacation to the place she's always wanted to go. And so it was already like, okay, it's a concession. And it turned out to be like the most sickening, just like mood-killing, day-ruining experience.
Yeah.
It was
Hey,
like
you
one
want
of
to go
those
make out?
What could crap on
It was
this
one of those
perfect vacation?
Perfect. Yeah, it was one of those idyllic vacation days where, you know, you're just away from everything and you're out there and you're living life together and it feels good and you're trying new things and it's like, wow, this is, you know, everything we thought it could be. And then like, all right, let's go check out this movie after dinner. And it was like the biggest downer I think I've ever experienced, like a 180
Let's
in
go.
my day.
I've heard a lot about this new movie that should be pretty fun for our anniversary. It's called Requiem for a Dream. Great cast.
You
Let's
step
see.
out the theater and you're looking at the ocean and the palm trees like, ew,
A
this
sick
place
world.
fucking sucks.
So
Everything's broken.
that said, I want to know if either of you remember what your first experience was with this movie. Did you see it when it came out, or did you happen to catch it, you know, on HBO eventually? Or you have seen it before, yeah?
Yeah, I didn't watch it in the theater, so I must have just watched it at home when it came out.
I remember you had a sketch of Joaquin's Joker at some point.
Yeah. I was very content to not watch this movie ever again.
Yeah.
I have like a short list of one and dones, and this was on the list.
Well, we talked about on the last session, I think, you're like, oh yeah, this movie is great, but I don't, not this one, but like such and such is great, but I don't really want to watch a super violent movie right now. You know,
We were talking
like
about The Killer.
everything going, oh right, yeah. Just like with everything going on in the world right now, it's, you know, I've seen enough carnage or whatever, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, they're going to hate this episode.
I will say, I mean, I wasn't like upset the first time I watched it, but this time I was like, the story is effective and it works on me, but I wasn't. It was to the point where I was watching with Mika and she's like, my friends told me I shouldn't watch this movie because of the things. She's like very sensitive. I was like, I don't think it's that bad. But so she ended up just
She's down
going-
with the fish fucking movie, but not.
It's not the fucking, it's the romance of it.
Oh,
the intimacy,
right.
the
Okay.
whatever. I don't need to explain
Interspecies
why
relations.
some women love The Shape of Water. It's true. If you know, you know.
Yep.
But this time even more, I was like, this didn't make me feel bad or anything like that. But so my first experience with it was hearing all the hype and everything. And even before it came out, I'm like, well, Joaquin Phoenix is an amazing actor, a little bit of a butthead at times, but always great on screen.
Because we'll always remember the Casey Affleck era where he was in character the whole time and we just thought he'd lost his mind.
Yeah. It's like, it's kind of pretentious to put other people through that. Of like, it's like it was all a character. Remember those awkward interactions we had? And
Now it's a movie.
Yeah.
And you're in it.
But despite that, looking at it going like, I don't want to watch this fucking movie. Like, I appreciate the Joker character and like Batman stories are good because of him. But at the same time, I think just a lot of people at different points and different versions of the characters have like missed the point a little bit, which I've complained about before of like, he sucks.
Yeah.
And sometimes they make him, that's my whole thing, that this is not an edgelord Joker. An edgelord Joker means...
See how cool it is that I'm this evil?
Yeah. Something has to be like, man, it's like a Fight Club, like, if you weren't such a fucking pussy, you could be this guy too. Where this is like not that.
I like how Chuck Palahniuk recently had to make another statement saying like, look, if idiot frat boys watched that movie and didn't realize that Tyler was the bad guy, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. Okay. It's more about them than it is about my story.
Yes. And you bring up an interesting point with the hype because this movie was like a small budget movie that made $1 billion. And it was largely because of not advertising and not the fact that everyone wanted this movie. Because this came out before the Snyder Cut, for example. And so like that universe is still happening. This was before the second Wonder Woman. That universe is still going, and this is probably the first time an existing universe has been ongoing in theaters, and then they went, we're going to do some Elseworlds
Here's
shit.
the Venom movie.
Yeah.
guys, you're ready for this,
right?
right? This is
And
what
it was
you're
that
hungry
sort of
for?
thing. And my reaction was like, why? The comedy guy is going to make a Joker movie separate from everything with Joaquin Phoenix. Like, again, don't get me wrong, I love Joaquin Phoenix, but like, why? Like, who is this for?
Yeah.
And then it was the controversy over people going, oh, this is a really violent movie. He's the protagonist. This is gonna, this
Incite the incels and
yeah, I mean, this is like the fucking heart of, American school shootings on the rise again and all this crazy shit. And people are like, this is a bad time for this to come out. Don't support it. And that inspires the debate. And then all of a sudden, the controversy is bigger than the movie and box office gold.
Well, and that's why I was like, I'll come back to this later. Like, there's no shortage of things to do or movies to watch. So I'll just, I react to hype anyway. I'm like, don't fucking tell me what to do. I hate you. I'm the boss, not you.
Evan's with you on this one.
Yes.
I know.
But
just wait for it to pass. And then,
and then come at it at a time when you're free of all that. You can just like accept it for what it is.
So 20 years later, you're like, The Sopranos was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, no, I actually still haven't watched this movie, so I'm excited to hear you guys tell me about it.
That's not a funny joke anymore. It happened last time, remember?
I watched the 1993 direct to Fox Broadcasting Joker. That's what we were going to watch.
Yes,
right?
that's the one.
Starring David Hasselhoff.
People are going to start Googling, what is that? I missed that.
He was Nick Fury in the
He would
made-for-TV
kill it.
Shield movie. I will say the trailer for this, I from the beginning, I thought the trailer was awesome. Like that smile, though you're feeling lonely. Like that sets the mood really, really well. And I didn't think it was going to be bad or wasn't going to like it. I just was like, I'm not going to watch it right now.
Yeah, again, I sort of felt like I don't need this. This could be good. This could be bad. But like, why? That I was just stuck on why does this exist? Because we have an existing thing that's, anyway.
Turned out it's pretty good.
Yeah. So let's get into the story here. The film opens with the iconic I, Tanya shot, as I'll call it, of him putting on the makeup in the mirror, the clown makeup, with tears in his eyes, followed by him getting robbed and beaten in the street at his sign spinning job. As he's writhing in pain on the ground, I didn't even notice this before, but it's a long shot that's kind of close up and slowly backing out. He reaches into his vest or whatever and squeezes something, and the water comes out of his flower on his chest, which I thought was actually laughed at that this time. And as the camera pans out, we get the title credit screen right there, and I think very clearly we're sort of building a very specific and different world than we've ever seen.
The fact that it's children who are beating him up, and not just that, they're like particularly sadistic about it. They're like
Kick him harder.
egging each other on to do that. And he's just, oh my God, please don't do this. A lot of it feels like 70s New York.
Well, and this
that's
is
what I think too.
Yeah, I think the movie takes place in like 1982 or something like that, and it's definitely made. A lot was discussed about that, like, oh, it's just fucking Taxi Driver ripoff when they put it in the Batman universe to get it made, or like this is just a ripoff of the King of Comedy or whatever. And like I want to talk about those movies as we go, because I've seen both of those movies, but in preparation for this, I decided not only did I listen to my old ass podcast from years ago with my friend Brian, because we had just seen the movie for the first time, and your fresh thoughts are long forgotten after you've seen a movie numerous times. So I listened to that, but then on Friday, I watched The King of Comedy and I watched Taxi Driver.
I've never seen The King of Comedy.
Before watching this movie. It's hard to find generally. It's not one of the more popular ones. I couldn't find it on any of my streaming apps, and I don't own it. I found the entire thing on YouTube. One upload, not a bunch of fucking chapters and shit, no ads, and it's passable quality. So I watched the whole thing on YouTube.
In both those films, Robert De Niro is the anti-hero, antagonist hero, right?
Yes. Yeah, he is our window into that world, I will say. What's interesting about De Niro in terms of the king of comedy and this movie is that it's a role reversal because he's the struggling comedian in that movie trying to get on this talk show with Jerry Lewis. And in this one, you know, he's the one with the comfy gig that our hero aspires to,
jokes.
you know. Yeah, exactly. Super Rats, Super Cats, you know. It is interesting in that way, and there are some parallels, which I'll mention later. But this movie was able to exist even in the midst of all these other films coming out in the DC EU because it was out of time. You know, this is 30 years ago. It's grimy New York. It's a totally different feel. There's not, if you just put, like you said, Venom, when we've got all the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies coming out, like, are they going to run into each other or not? What the fuck's going, you know, you don't have that feeling at all.
Yeah, you're not trying to pitch to me that somehow these things are all happening simultaneously.
Yeah.
I liked to, in the very beginning, when he's putting on his makeup, too, that the sort of radio or TV is talking about the garbage strike.
How the city's filthy and...
Yeah, without seeing anything, it's just sets the table really quick. Like, okay, cool, it's set in the past. I know this to be like a difficult, kind of grimy time.
Yeah.
On top of that, like every day, 15 tons of garbage is piling up. You're like, damn.
The infrastructure of the city is failing and the bureaucracy is failing and none of these people have jobs and the garbage is everywhere. I mean, it's a really great, I don't want to say, I guess contrivance, because then you get all these amazing scenes where there's just garbage everywhere. Like,
yeah, it's in front of
storefronts,
get bags
all
all
over the place.
alleys, you know? Yeah, it's everywhere. We cut now to Arthur in plain clothes, laughing in what looks like a very painful, involuntary manner. He's in therapy, and the opening line is...
Is it just me? Or is it getting crazier out there?
The social worker asks to read his notebook, which looks like totally fucking insane at first glance, and she focuses on the line, I just hope my death makes more sense, with a C, than my life.
And she's like, huh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's a good joke in here.
You got a bright future ahead of you, buddy.
He says that he was probably happier when he was committed to the hospital, and we get a very brief flashback of him bashing his head against the wall in a white room.
That part is interesting. Like, she asks him why he was there. He's like, you know, I don't know. How do you not know?
So I don't know how much you guys have
been in a
really
mental hospital.
Thought about, yeah. In my many stays, I can tell you, they've gotten worse. No.
Well, and this would take place like in before Ronald Reagan emptied out all the mental asylums. Kind of,
I think we're kind of witnessing it happen in this.
They're cutting the budget for everything.
Oh, yeah, because at a certain point he gets told like, oh yeah, this is over, you know. But I don't know how much you guys have thought about or kind of analyzed the conclusions of this movie, but this is the first hint we're getting in terms of what is real and what is not.
Oh,
because
the delusion.
Yes,
yeah,
because
that makes sense.
In this fucking 4-second flashback, the clock on the wall has the exact same time as the clock he's currently sitting by in the therapy session, which is 11:11. There are little things that go all the way to the end of the movie that will continue to make you wonder, some of it what is real, some of it what order did these things happen, things like that. But this is kind of the first example of it. Still, even though he said he was happier in the mental hospital, she denies his request for a higher dosage, saying he's already on 7 different medications.
They have to be doing something.
Yeah. And he basically says, I just don't want to feel this bad anymore. On the bus ride home, he gets scolded by a mother for making faces at her kid. His uncomfortable laughter is accompanied by a card that reads, please forgive my laughter, I have a condition. I fucking love this part. And I think that Jeff Johns actually wrote something similar in 3 Jokers. I think it was in the 3rd book. One of the Jokers says, like, I'm going to let you in on a little secret about the Joker. It hurts when I laugh, you know, which I don't think he took from this. I think they were made around the same time. But I love that element of it. I think that's part of what makes his performance so different and so, I guess, just human, you know, that he's so alone and ostracized, and this thing, we'll see like in the comedy club and other places, he doesn't know how to act around people, and he kind of watches them for cues. But he also has this thing that like just makes everyone fucking uncomfortable, and he can't stop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it plays into it too, because the uncomfortableness makes it happen more. It's just this weird.
Yeah, because he's always uncomfortable,
Yeah.
then it keeps happening. And
Yeah.
And other people read into it as him like taunting them,
Yeah.
which makes them upset.
Well, and
angry.
she's like, "Oh, you think this is fucking funny?" And he's shaking his head with a grimace on his face, but he's like fucking cracking up too. And it's a very interesting thing to see.
I think that this also another table setting kind of thing. Like,
Yes.
this is just like how crappy it is out there and how misunderstood he is, that he's trying to have this interaction with just
Anyone.
a kid.
Just,
Just
there's a kid who's staring at him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's just engaging him, and
And he is a clown for kids by his job.
Yeah.
So here he is out in the world, and she just looks at him like, "Ugh, who's this freak?" You know.
Stop bothering my kid.
And he's like, "I work with children."
totally.
At his dilapidated apartment, Arthur cooks dinner for his aging mother, and she mentions that Thomas Wayne hasn't responded to her letters. Together, they watch the Murray Franklin Show, which is basically the Johnny Carson show, but with Robert De Niro. Arthur imagines himself in the audience and then singled out by Murray himself. He brings Arthur on stage and says that he's special, and he wishes he had a son just like you. I'd give it all up if I had a son just like you. And this is clearly a guy who, again, is not only just a big loner, but he doesn't have a father in his life. You know, he's taking care of his elderly mother. Like, you can see the longing and the fantasy. Because right at this point, it seems very innocent that he just wants someone to give him an attaboy and a hug and, you know.
To be special. And
Yeah. But we're kind of transported from him watching the TV to him in the studio at the show. De Niro, I will say, is pitch perfect in this role, like so many of his supporting roles have been in recent years.
Bad Grandpa.
Yeah.
I haven't,
Meet the
I haven't
Fockers.
seen it.
No, that's a leading role.
Okay.
But I think that we don't need to discuss his fucking legendary accolades or his greatness, but
You get to a point where they'll give you money to do anything. And so I
But he has also done things which anyone has in a long, long career where he just kind of doing his thing, you know? And I feel like in a movie like Silver Linings Playbook or Amsterdam, actually really
Stardust.
American Hustle, like all three of those David Russell movies, he's in smaller parts and he's bringing out something different in himself that I think is more interesting than seeing him, you know, lead another tough guy thing or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah.
This very much feels like that. Like he's bringing his A game. He's trying to not only be that sort of old school comic type, but also sort of the beacon of morality in this movie.
But in a way that's like establishment. You sort of don't like him. Like, you don't think he should be killed, but you're like,
Well, he's
you're
very
a jerk.
He's very stiff, and he is definitely taking all those cheap shots that those type of comics do.
Yeah.
They poke fun at celebrities or whoever's the person of the hour or whatever. But you also see him as sort of the personified reaction to a lot of what Arthur does at a certain point.
I know that part of comedy is poking fun at people. And
Don't mansplain comedy to me.
Yeah,
Okay,
fuck
sorry.
you.
Yeah, my bad. But take that back.
I take it back. Comedy is not about that.
Like every
Don't laugh at home. Don't laugh.
everybody treating Arthur as if he is in the same mental space as them or something. So that's all well and good to poke fun at somebody who has the same amount of confidence as you or is
Right.
in on the game or something. And
Self-awareness. And,
yeah, we just jabs back and forth. But how can anybody look at dude or interact with him and not realize that you're not thinking about things in the same way and stuff,
Yeah.
and then continue to do those things anyways?
Yeah.
Not like don't poke the bear, but how can you be so unaware and so he seemingly cares for these 3 business guys that got murdered on the subway or something, but can't see what's like sitting right next to him
And that's
how
kind
the
of like
stuff affects him.
The meat of the movie is
Yeah.
the divide of the people who look at him and see what he's done, and they read into it in their own ways. But like a whole group of people are like, "Yeah, we're tired of being kicked. Let's explode." And then a whole bunch of other people who are in a better situation who are like, "What's wrong with you?
Totally.
Yeah.
Why would you do something this extreme? Like, what's
Right.
I don't understand."
And it does feel a little the scenario that I don't like in stuff where people just don't explain themselves. Maybe live television at that moment wasn't the time to. Well, no, it was a pretty good opportunity. Like, how come he never says, "I was coming to the defense of this woman," or there was just a misunderstanding or something?
It's that typical movie thing where
Why
like,
didn't you just call him on the cell phone?
you could clear up
Yeah.
some things if you just, but at the same time, like when you're in the moment, you're not always thinking of the right thing to say as well. So many times we're like, "Oh man, I should have fucking said,"
Yeah,
whatever.
because we've already established he's not like all there, so he's
No.
not going to make the right choice. And also, I think he's made the transformation at that point into just being
Yeah, it has nothing to do with
purely
defending
chaotic.
someone's honor.
Yeah.
Now we cut to Arthur's skeletal back looking like Christian Bale in The Machinist. He's in the clown locker room, whatever.
Why do you say it like that's not a thing?
Yeah.
I don't
That's
know
exactly
exactly
what
what
it
to
is.
call it.
Clowns only.
I don't know what he's doing with his.
I think he's breaking in his clown shoes.
Yeah, or maybe they lace up so high that you have to stretch them that far down in order to get your feet in. But the way that they obviously intentionally, he's making these like, these like wrenching, just these weird sounds, and then but it's his back, and so it gives you the impression that it's like his body creaking and stuff.
His coworker Randall gives him a gun after hearing about him getting mugged in the street and
Fuck
says,
Randall.
"You need to protect yourself out there."
That guy's a great actor. He was in Boardwalk Empire, and he was a character who always talked about himself in the third person. So he's just like, "Fuck you."
Yeah, you
Like
suck,
George
man.
Blah Blahs needs a little bit of this. George. That
Yeah,
guy's
he
a
was
really good
great.
actor.
He was great in this.
He was in True Detective also, I think.
Oh, one
It's
of the good seasons?
The first season.
Okay, good.
I think it's him.
Arthur insists that he's not supposed to have a gun, but Randall also insists. He makes some joke to Gary, a little person, and Arthur laughs with him as he exits the room. This is one of the best shots in the movie, I think, where the camera follows him down the hall as the laughter stops. And I think at this point, I'm starting to feel like we are really getting to see a once-in-a-lifetime kind of performance here. Like, this is one of the moments where I think you kind of like him basically crying, shaking his head no while laughing, But I think this of him doing that maniacal laugh, and they used it in the trailer, but this whole long shot down the hallway, it's just the perfect combination of like social awkwardness, his fucked up condition, and
Yeah, is he laughing because the one he thinks he's supposed to, and also the joke made him a little uncomfortable, and so he's just like,
I think it's kind of both. And, then he walks into the boss's office, who's played by, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, is Josh Pius. He was the voice of Raphael in the first Turtles movies, and you can kind of hear it a couple times in the movie,
I just know him as like, oh, it's that guy.
particularly as he like chews him out on the phone later. You can hear the like angry New York thing come out. And like, it's Raph!
Bullshit. What kind of clown carries a fucking gun?
You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket.
Is Raph saying fuck a lot, but he does not believe Arthur's story about getting jumped. And he says, like, just give the sign back.
And he's like, why would I take a sign?
Who knows why madmen do what they do?
He's like, do it or I'm going to take it out of your paycheck. And the music creeps in and slowly drowns out his boss. And we just push closer and closer on Arthur's disturbing smile. And then after way too long of that, which I love, then we cut to him beating the shit out of these bags of trash in the alleyway. And first time I watched this, I was like, is he beating his boss behind that dumpster? Like, oh no, he's just wishing he was, And then at the end of this, he actually kind of collapses in despair and frustration. At the apartment building, Arthur holds the elevator for a woman named Sophie and her child. I'm sure she regrets this decision forever.
Yeah.
The elevator stalls, and she makes the taxi driver gun motion to her head.
Especially because like her little kid is like, Mommy, where we got? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and then they're stuck in a broken elevator. And I think she said something about like, this fucking building sucks. You know. And as they get off at the same floor, Arthur then stops to repeat this motion, the gun to the head, and then creepily stand there staring until she goes into her apartment.
It's like, oh, I thought that's what we were doing. Was this inappropriate?
We're playing along, right?
To respond in kind?
Yeah.
You did it first.
That's what Simon says.
Old Evan over here, he's a real son of a bitch. Yeah. What a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah. Oh, that's what we're doing?
Yeah. Isn't that our thing?
This Zazie has a very nice smile.
Okay.
She has a nice set of teeth.
I only know her from this and Deadpool 2.
She's in Atlanta also.
Oh,
She's
I've heard that's a good
interest.
show.
It's really good. Strange and weird. It could exist in this universe.
It's that fucked up?
Maybe more fucked up just because it's very surreal. A lot of there's things that are like,
Christ.
there's a whole episode where they go to a...
Way to make me not want to see it now.
So it's not upsetting. They go to a celebrity pro basketball tournament or whatever, and Justin Bieber's one of the people playing, and it's just some black guy. But he is Justin Bieber in this universe. He's just a young black man who's shit-talking everyone, and he's
funny.
Justin Bieber also.
Okay.
It's very strange.
I'm very confused now. Arthur bathes his mother. Let's get on to the naked old lady. And she continues to worry about Thomas Wayne not helping them out. He tells her that it's okay. I'll take care of you with my stand-up career. And she says, but Arthur, don't you have to be funny to be a comedian?
What a sick burn.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And she is so sincere in this moment of like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, so flat.
Afterward, he watches TV while playing with his new revolver. He dances and talks to himself
He's like,
before...
hey, Arthur.
You're a really good dancer.
I know. That's so funny.
I actually quoted that line when I was rewatching it the other day. Then he shoots a hole in the wall because he's like, oh, I am a really good dancer. You know who's not? Him. And he just fucking shoots his own living room and quickly turns up the TV and tells his mom, it's okay, I'm watching a war movie. Which on an old ass 70s TV, like
While the laugh track goes on.
Well, turn it on. Turn it on.
The next day, he stalks Sophie on her way to work. And that night, Arthur goes to a comedy club and takes notes from the crowd. He laughs at all the wrong parts, taking cues from the audience to know when to react. At home, he continues writing in his journal, but he switches hands. Now, he's writing left-handed and really sloppy, and this is an early cue that this is a dissociative personality, perhaps. Immediately preceding this, and it's something you really got to kind of pay attention to, and I didn't notice it the first few times I saw it, but he's writing right-handed in the fucking comedy club, and then they immediately transition to him at his desk. He switched hands, and it looks all fucking insane.
That's interesting. I didn't notice that at all.
Yeah.
No, me neither.
So again, another real subtle clue. Sophie knocks on the door, asking if he followed her earlier. She laughs it off, though, saying, I was hoping you'd come in and rob the place. He jokes, well, I have a gun. I could come back tomorrow.
Which is like, that's textbook, like, be on Reddit or something like, so tell me, was this weird? I said this to a girl.
Yeah.
I thought things were going really well.
And you're like, do I need to report this guy or not? She laughs, and he invites her to see him at the comedy club sometime. The next day, Arthur sings If You're Happy and You Know It at a children's hospital. While doing the stomp your feet part, the gun falls out of his pant leg. He grabs it immediately and plays it off as a joke. I love the face he makes here. Like crosses his arms as like a tight smile and like puts his finger like, shh, don't tell anyone.
So much of this stuff is so awkward.
Yeah, one of the little kids like does gun fingers at him.
Yeah. And he tries to also play it off as a joke when his boss calls him and gets fired. Now here's where you hear the fucking New York Raphael shit.
Yeah.
Like, you brought a fucking gun to a fucking kid's party. Damn! I got to insert that sample now.
Come back here! I'm not finished with you! Damn!
The next scene mirrors 1974's Charles Bronson Death Wish film and the 2007 Gender Bend remake with Jodie Foster, The Brave One. They're on the subway as some white-collar douchebags harass a woman 3-on-1, ganging up. And Arthur, still in his full clown makeup from the hospital, bald cap, wig, all of that, starts laughing uncontrollably and draws their attention. The woman walks to another car, and one bully starts singing, "Send in the clowns." This is another moment where I start to feel like this could be some sort of hallucination, distorted reality. I don't really know. Because he goes on and does like the whole song, and it does not feel real as the guys are all creeping up on him. And Todd Phillips described this character before the movie came out as an unreliable narrator. So having read that interview and then watching this movie, the whole time I'm kind of trying to figure out, like, when are we in his head and when are we watching him, objectively? Once they've beaten him badly enough, and they sure do, he shoots 2 of them 4 times, and the third gets away. He chases him onto the subway platform and shoots 4 more times.
That math doesn't
with
add up.
a handgun revolver.
Yeah.
So again...
Well, this is the DC universe,
No. But again, I'm just making the trail of breadcrumbs as we go here of what is real and what is not.
Well, that's interesting because when I think of like this whole scene, up until the point where he chases the other guy down and executes him, when you're on a late night subway train and 3 men are beating you severely,
yes,
a lot of people would argue that's a time that it's okay to shoot one of them. Regardless of what you feel about guns.
Which is why it mirrors The Brave One and Death Wish, which those are movies where someone suffered a horrible tragedy and decided they were going to become the vigilante, right? And if anyone fucks with them again, whatever. And so
But this is literally in that moment.
I know, but I'm saying like those movies make it more premeditated. They make it look more cool. I'm fighting back. And in this moment, it is much different. He is minding his own business. He does get attacked, but there's a shift mid-scene as he then pursues this guy who's running and pleading for his life and guns him down in cold blood.
But then on top of that, when you frame it in the idea of like what is real or what isn't, that makes me also think like, well, all we really know, because the way the other characters react to the movie, is that he killed those 3 guys on the subway.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like how much else of that happened.
Yeah, we don't know that last part even happened.
Or that
because he did tag him once as he was running away.
But even that, like how much of the first part happened?
Well, yeah, with the song and all that too.
Well, how much was he actually really being beaten? Was it that, or was like that in his head? Was he perceiving a threat that wasn't there? And that's like...
Yeah, absolutely. Based on their behavior to that woman, he could totally. Overwhelmed now, he runs up to the street and locks himself in a public bathroom, which did 1970s, 80s New York used to just have public bathrooms you could go into? Because I tell you, when I'm downtown anywhere, I'm like, where can I take a piss?
I think so.
I want to know.
But I figured there would be someone sleeping in it. But
yeah. Anyway, the ringing in his ears that we've heard ever since the gunshots, it fades away, and his frantic breath is now under control. And we see the first ever Joker dance, which was actually filmed the day that Todd Phillips got the first sample of music for the film and used the actual music, and that's what he danced to in that scene in real time.
That's cool. React to this.
The scene was largely made up on the spot. As Joaquin said, they struggled to illustrate the change from Arthur to Joker in that moment. And the whole thing was supposed to be like he looks in the mirror at himself and there's a thing, and they couldn't figure out how to do it. Joaquin called it an unexpected and strange process that was really enjoyable, finding that version of it.
I mean, it's been mentioned before in every commentary about this movie, but his physical performance is crazy in this. The showing all the different states he's in and what that means for his body and his tension versus when he's loose. And
yes,
I mean, by the end of it, he's a pretty good dancer. His moves out on stage.
He really improved.
Afterward, there's a brief shot of Sophie greeting him at her door, and they go inside together. The next day, he's cleaning out his locker at work, having been fired. The other clowns are talking about the subway shooting. They ask about his gun at the children's hospital as well. saying, what, if they don't laugh, you're going to shoot yourself? Is that the new act, you know? This, I believe, plants the seed in his mind for what he eventually plans to do on TV. He tells them to ask Randall about the gun before doing an improvised bit by Joaquin Phoenix where he says, oh, forgot to punch out, and literally punches the time card clock off the wall, which was not a scripted gag, and he just punched that thing until it came off the wall. On the way out, he defaces a sign that says, don't forget to smile, that now reads, don't smile. Thomas Wayne goes on the news to denounce the subway killings, saying that the clown mask is no surprise because people like myself who have made something of our lives will always look down on you peasants as clowns, the clowns that you are.
He's maybe the most unsubtle part of this movie. Especially if he's supposed to be Bruce Wayne's dad, this version of him is...
It's a real dick.
I regret that because last time we read Joker, in the sequel, Damned, we do get a smug bastard of a Thomas Wayne as well. That's really the only other version I can think of that acts like this.
I thought one of them...
don't really like it.
Like Imposter or something, when he talks about how shitty his dad was or cold or something like that.
Oh, maybe.
When he's talking to Leslie in therapy.
It's rare, though, that we get this kind of a Thomas Wayne. It's certainly not my preference, but it works in this story.
It's usually more of like he's like a giving philanthropist, doctor, thoughtful.
Yeah.
He was like the model of selflessness and helping people, not hurting people.
Yeah, and
I don't
he's
feel like
kind
this
of
guy's that.
retaining those elements of Thomas is sort of what keeps Batman's, moral code in place, so he doesn't become Azrael or something.
Yeah, and I think it makes their deaths that much more traumatic because they were really positive parts of his life.
Yeah.
Not that you wouldn't be bummed if your dad was killed, but if he was...
He was not the nicest guy.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe he deserved it.
You get what you fucking deserve, Dad.
Yeah. If he was a dickhead, I don't think that it would be such a big deal.
At therapy, this is the famous all I have are negative thoughts scene. And Arthur muses that he heard a song, said, my name is Carnival, and that's my stage name. Says that he never knew until just now if he even really existed. But I do, and people are starting to notice. And she keeps talking, ignoring him entirely, saying, look, the city has cut the mental health program. I'm out of a job. They don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about me.
Are you even listening to me?
Yeah. He's like, I had a breakthrough. And she's like, I will never see you again. He asks, well, where am I going to get my medication now? And she just kind of fucking shrugs it off like, dude, where am I going to get a fucking job? Like, we're both fucked here.
They don't care about you. They don't care about me.
Yeah. So speaking of the Reagan era, like destroying all of the sanitariums or whatever you call them.
And to be fair, that was a
the
reaction
time.
because they were hellholes. But like, I don't know if emptying everybody out into the streets with no support
Exactly.
was the right.
Yeah, there wasn't an alternative.
Yeah.
Back at the comedy club, Arthur takes the stage for the first time, as far as we're aware. He gives the host an awkward script to read as his introduction, much like what he said in the imagined Murray Franklin appearance, that like, my mother said I was here to spread joy and laughter. And he's like, okay, buddy, anyway, here's the fucking guy. Arthur is so nervous that he's practically choking on his laughter and can't even get a word out. When he finally speaks, it's like the worst in terms of comedy. It's the worst bomb a comedian has ever had. And despite his failure, Sophie watches adoringly from a table in the back.
Well, no, because before that, as the scene goes on, the music kind of swells up and then you start to hear audience laughter. Like...
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah, because
that's
it's like
a great point. Because you don't hear what he's saying, but you do start to hear some reactions, and then you see her face. So again, that's a twist in reality.
Yeah,
that's great.
And they're Oh, I guess it's working. Because I think the first time I watched this, I did have that thought of like, oh, maybe they actually are. Maybe something is starting to work or something, and they're laughing.
That's funny.
Yeah, at the very least, maybe they're just laughing at him.
Good point.
Yeah. I didn't think about that either.
You know what's funny is in The King of Comedy, I mentioned about halfway through. It's like, it's so weird. His whole thing is like, no, I got good material. I'm a comic. I can do it, and he's badgering everyone at this show trying to get on, their Tonight Show thing. And I was like, it's weird that we've never heard his material. They haven't showed us a page from his journal or anything. We've never seen him perform. They keep telling him like, yeah, the tape that you sent in, it was actually pretty good. Just like try it out on stage. We want to see you on stage. We'll send somebody out. And I was like, we never see him do it.
That's a nice choice.
Yeah, that's
but what's
interesting.
funny is in the finale, we do see him do the act, and it's pretty funny. It's like, wow, this guy was actually not bad. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that choice that you're kind of justifying this guy's actions a little bit.
No, but I mean, the idea is because you're good doesn't mean you deserve it without knowing anything about that movie.
Yeah.
Just the idea of like, it's not like, I'm fucking good. Give me my shot, goddammit.
It doesn't deserve, it doesn't necessarily justify his actions, but it does make him right.
If you just give me a chance, I'll show you this is.
Yeah. On the walk home, he sees the newspaper headlines about a killer clown on the loose. Sophie, over his shoulder, says, 3 less assholes in Gotham City. Fuck them. And they go to a diner and have a laugh. In between, we see an important shot where a taxi slowly passes by. There's a passenger in the back with a clown mask. He locks eyes with Arthur, who looks very proud to see his influence out there in the world.
One of the cool things about that scene that you guys probably didn't notice is that the driver is a AI digital young Robert De Niro. It's only there for a split second, but it's like a...
Are you fucking with me right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, what?
I'm like that.
Just
Nice work,
You
Eagle
see it
Eyes.
in the mirror. It's really quick. And then
Travis?
This is a little guy with a fucking mohawk.
AI digital Carrie Fisher's in the passenger seat. Peter Cushing's walking by.
Evan, that deserved a bigger laugh. Come on.
The way that you just like had the little like squeal.
The throat whistle?
Yeah. That made me think of Nedry in Jurassic Park. He hits those places.
Yeah. Arthur and his mom watch Murray Franklin on TV, and he whisks her up for a dance to the closing theme song. Afterward, he finds a returned letter that his mother wrote to Thomas Wayne, stating that he is Arthur's father and they need support. Through her locked door, Arthur demands answers. She said that he was very powerful and made her keep it all a secret. Arthur goes clowning around at the gate at Wayne Manor, luring a young Bruce to watch his magic tricks. He gets closer, and Arthur puts his thumbs in Bruce's mouth to force the smile, like he did to himself in the mirror in the opening scene.
Nothing weird about that.
Nothing at all. Alfred confronts him and calls his mother, Penny, delusional, even laughing in his face at the idea that Thomas Wayne could be his father. Arthur chokes Alfred through the gate before letting go and running off into the distance.
That actor who plays Alfred, he's great. I think he's been in a ton of things, but I saw him in the Amazon show Catastrophe.
Oh, that's a great show.
Which is a great show, and he has some like really, really great lines. He's kind of an asshole who dates one of the characters after they divorce. Mm-hmm. But he's really, really funny, and they go to like a bar, and he's...
So he dates Sharon Horgan's character on that show?
No, he dates the woman who was in Extras, the Scottish woman.
Okay, I haven't seen her in a while. Never mind.
Well,
I'm leading us way off in the weeds here.
He's just really good in that, a very unique character, and he's also in The Great. He plays like the head general of the Russian army, and he's just a complete asshole, but kind of charming. Not asshole like... That guy's an asshole. He's like a mess of a person, but
he's not
funny.
like a warm, witty Alfred. He's very much like... we've never seen Alfred introduced by addressing a fucking threat to the child, so...
Yeah, or
who knows?
Even like a young, stocky version of him.
Yeah.
I mean, in my head, Alfred is just forever an old person.
And like wise and kind. No, this is the right Alfred for this Thomas Wayne.
Yeah, I assumed that...
Well, yeah, because if Bruce is young...
His, wards
that's true.
They're going to, age together, so by the time he's Batman, this Alfred would be an older man. Outside the apartment, Penny is being loaded into an ambulance, and Arthur rides along. The cops question him outside, saying, they came looking for you about the subway killings. But his mom, they say, went hysterical. And after our Gotham by Gaslight episode, I actually did look up the origin of that phrase, and it's exactly as you said. I did not know that was a sexist term.
Most medical things are sexist or ableist or misogynist or, something like that.
I'm sorry, man, but can your husband explain your symptoms, please?
Somebody get this woman some Valium or some laudanum. Let's drug her up so I can talk to a real man. I like this scene because this is the first moment where in his response to them, he's totally confident and kind of pushes back against them. This movie up to this point, he's never been like that. Yeah, he did shoot 3 people, but even that was a moment of reaction and terror. Yeah, where this is I don't remember what he says.
Well, he kind of blows them off, because they ask him about getting fired for bringing a gun to the children's hospital, and he's like, it's a prop, it's part of my act, whatever. And
it's like, did you do something to my mom?
What do you mean? Did you fuck my mom, Santa Claus? Did you fuck my mom?
Did you do this?
Yeah, because he's like, oh, wait, so you came? And he's like, yeah, we started asking her questions, and they said she had a stroke or whatever, and it is very interesting where he accuses them of causing it when in reality it's the things he's done.
Well, so strokes are a physical thing.
Well, I know, but but if there's any reason for them being there, it's because of the things he's done.
Yeah.
I think the random times that he stands up for himself or speaks with confidence are interesting. Like his last time in the, shared clown space before
clown
punching
locker room, we decided to call it.
Yeah. Is it the same?
It's the Clown Depot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Where they get their assignments.
With his whole why don't you ask Randall thing? He has these moments where I'm not eloquent.
But he's pushing back a little bit.
Yeah, but he's not
standing up
firm.
for himself.
Yeah, he's not stuttering and stuff.
Yeah.
Or when he's at the hospital talking to the cops outside. That's not the dude that you would expect to stand his ground with the cops. So these random times that he stands up for himself are interesting to me.
But then we get the funny end where he's walking in the exit.
Yeah, I love this because it's the perfect setup where they're like, what about this? Is this part of your act too? Whatever they were talking about. And he goes, what do you think? And then immediately walks into a fucking glass door. And I think that is one of the few genuine laughs in the movie, of an
I like when he
actual
killed those people. That was
comedic
cool.
thing. Right. Yeah. Hilarious.
Flicks his cigarette like a badass and then walks into a window.
Yeah. Anyway,
it has the feel of the.
Hey guys. Oh, big gulps, huh? All right. Well, see you later.
Yeah. See you later.
What? I just think that dude just can't win. Even he just has a moment where he stands up to the cops and I bet in his head he's like,
mic
I
drop.
just told those motherfuckers, and then immediately walks into something. Dude just can't stay on top.
That actually, that could have been a Jim Carrey moment too. It's not a comedy by any means, but that was one of the few moments where it has kind of a silly laugh. Inside, he and Sophie watch over his sleeping mother in her hospital bed. Murray comes on TV, and Arthur is shocked to see his own footage in Murray's monologue.
This time, though, there's no laughter.
He's delighted at first, but Murray starts making fun of him, and Arthur's eyes go cold. I really like when I was growing up, I'd tell people I wanted to be a comedian, and they would laugh at me. Well, no one's laughing now. And then dead silence from the crowd, and Murray's like, "You could say that again, pal."
And that's the super low-hanging fruit, punching down
sticky.
Bad.
Yeah.
I bet you Murray was a great stand-up comedian before he got that show, and then.
Are you talking about Jay Leno now,
or just anyone who else to like that show?
I mean, hey, if you had to crank out 90 minutes of material every day, our podcast comes out twice a month. If we're lucky. So, I mean.
To do that every day, to pretend like you're
going to lower the bar, buddy.
These celebrities you're talking to, maybe one out of every 12, you're like, that guy's actually kind of interesting. What a neat conversation we had.
What I like about a guy like Conan O'Brien is that he's been able to sustain a 30-year career without doing that. I remember when they had that documentary about Britney Spears and there'd be a montage of all the people making fun of her and talking shit, or I mentioned I, Tonya earlier, the Tonya Harding thing. You never see a clip of Conan O'Brien in those. He never did it. He's always taken the high road.
He's not about making fun of people, but it's not that kind of
Yeah, but it's
material.
not like, they're in the news, something terrible happened to them or something, and he's like, that dumbass,
Yeah, this is a prime opportunity. Knock them down a peg.
Later, we see a whole crowd of clowns outside an opera, I think, protesting Thomas Wayne and basically the whole 1%.
It's the Charlie Chaplin movie they're all watching.
Was it an actual film?
Yeah, it was Modern Times.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was a performance.
Which, if I knew what that movie was about, this is where I could go, what a great choice of movie for them to be watching. Definitely fits the themes of this movie.
Silent Easter eggs.
They do show that one shot, which is used as like a great, look at how cool these effects were. It's when Charlie Chaplin is like roller skating by the edge of some sheer drop. And that was actually like a matte painting close to the camera in perspective. And he's just next to a mat, but it looks like he's going next to an edge of a cliff kind of thing.
That's cool. Arthur, sans makeup, takes advantage of this commotion and sneaks past the chaos into a side door. Dressed as an usher, he follows Thomas Wayne into the bathroom for a confrontation.
Also, him dressed as the usher is a very like Joker feeling looking moment.
Yeah, just in some
red
very
circus
scenario
clothes.
specific disguise.
This is my only disappointment whenever I watch this film. I knew, because they fucking announce everything before movies are made, Alec Baldwin was cast as that part.
Oh, that would have been really good.
I know. He's like the perfect prick when he wants to be.
That's who I am, and you're nothing.
Can you imagine an older Alec Baldwin doing his Glengarry Glen Ross asshole bit in this scene? Like, oh my God, I wish those words were coming out of his mouth. That's the only thing that
I'll do some AI research. I bet you I can get what you want.
make that happen. This guy, though, Brett Cullen, also played the congressman that was kidnapped by Selena in Dark Knight Rises.
Well, so that always
he's
is
got
weird
a
to me because
Batman
he's in a movie
connection.
with Matthew Modine, and I'm like,
Huh.
these guys are almost the same person. That's weird. Put both of them in your movie.
It was one of those where he dropped out for scheduling conflicts, and around the same time, I think it was 2018, he was in Edward Norton's like written, directed, starring film Motherless Brooklyn, which is a very good movie.
Baldwin or this guy?
Baldwin. I'm wondering if that's why he had to drop out. But yeah, it's like Edward Norton, Bruce Willis, Bobby Cannavale. Is that how you say his name? Yeah.
Also in Boardwalk Empire.
Great cast. And not to give anything away, but his role in the story has like a similar beat to this moment, which is interesting to me. That he's like, oh no, I wound up having to do this other movie, but kind of two birds, like
What's my name? Fuck you. That's my name.
yes.
You see this watch? You see this watch?
All right. Thomas says that Penny adopted Arthur before she was committed at Arkham. As Arthur loses his composure, Thomas, a much larger man, punches him square in the face and says on his way out, if you touch my son again, I'll fucking kill you. This next part, I believe, is the most important point in the film, as I believe there's sort of a fork in the road here. Wherever your interpretations are, this is one of the moments where you could argue different things. That night, Arthur's phone is ringing off the hook. The cops are still trying to find him. As he rips apart his fridge before climbing in and closing himself inside. This moment is never explained, but I believe symbolizes either figuratively or literally the death of Arthur Fleck. When the phone rings the next morning, his dream comes true. It's the Murray Franklin show asking for Arthur. He hesitates as if he's so shocked to hear this that he's forgotten his own name. When they ask, they say, hey, this is so-and-so at the Murray Franklin show. Is this Arthur? He doesn't even know to say yes. They book him to appear on next week's show. Arthur goes to Arthur Asylum.
Arthur goes to Arthur. You fucking idiot.
This is why we're ending the show, guys. Not just, Arthur goes to Arkham Asylum to find the records on his mother's history. This is a great cameo by Brian Tyree Henry, who I loved in the movie Widows.
He's just great. He's also in Atlanta.
Nice.
He's a main character.
Arthur practically admits to murdering some people, and it gets even more tense when the clerk reads her diagnosis to him out loud. He's like, this was your mom? Because it's talking about like child abuse and all this shit,
Well, there's even another moment where he says something about like, I just did some really bad shit. And
well, yeah, he basically confesses to what he did. And he's like, how do you get in here, by the way? Like,
I don't really feel that bad about it. And that's when he kind of looks at him and he's like, I'm just like a clerk. I can't.
Yeah, you should come back. Yeah.
You should see someone. And he's like, oh, that's the thing. They canceled all of that.
Yeah. Arthur reaches through and steals the folder, running to the staircase to read it. And I've always loved this shot as they're talking to each other through the diamond grate metal there, because the way that it frames his eyes is like the Bruce Timm, Mark Hamill Joker, who has those dark triangles under his eyes. I always thought it looked kind of like that. As Arthur reads the medical history, we flash back to Penny being committed at Arkham for neglecting her adopted son around an abusive boyfriend. Her son was found bruised, malnourished, and tied to a radiator. This could explain the head trauma written on the back of his little card that he hands out, like, I have a condition, can be caused by X, Y, and Z. She says, I never heard him cry, though. He was always such a happy child, right? And so we're sort of getting a couple things here. Like, one, this lady is also not of sound mind, and we can't necessarily trust what she says. Also, that he came from this fucked up background. But also, it neither really confirms or disproves Thomas Wayne's adoption theory, because she was earlier, like, he's a very powerful man. He said we had to keep it secret, right? And so he's the one who first tells us you're adopted. And we see it here, knowing he's so powerful and connected. He could have also manipulated this. So, like, it could have been like, oh shit, she's having my baby. She's going to try to whatever. Fucking throw her in the cage.
Yeah. Yeah, easily.
So it's, yeah.
And it wouldn't be like wild for someone who is messed up in the head who adopts a child and then like brings that about in them physically with violence or whatever. But also it's like, oh, maybe this is some kind of like inherited mental illness, mental issues.
Sure.
Her own delusional thing. Because that's the biggest thing for me with that was like if she has some kind of delusional idea about her relationship with Thomas Wayne and all this other stuff.
And Arthur has the same fixations on Murray Franklin and Thomas. And
disconnections from reality. So that would support the idea that he was not adopted. He is her actual child. Yes. And then how does that connect to the rest of it?
Yeah.
So the adoption papers are what, falsified or what?
Yeah, that's like what
potentially.
Or like, she did adopt him, but he was already her kid, but he made it. Thomas Wayne used his power to make it seem like she adopted him. Like, okay, well, you're going to have to go through this process. We're going to say he was abandoned. You adopted him. He doesn't have a father, that kind of thing.
And this is the stuff that's why I really wanted to do this film on the show, because
are you about to tell me I'm adopted?
Yes. There are so many things that relate to our situation and our relationship. No, there are so many points in the movie where it, on the surface, answers your question. But then if you watch it again, you're like, well, wait, but it doesn't, because there's enough doubt. There's always enough doubt that it could be taken one of two ways. And that's kind of why I said, like, there's sort of a demarcation line right here where things are really open to interpretation from here to the end.
We see him crawling into the fridge, and then he wakes up on the bed. Which is not like you couldn't have got out of the fridge and went to the bed, but that we explicitly, that's how this scene ends and that's how this scene starts.
Yes. And yeah, there's so many things from here on in. Arthur walks home in the rain and goes to see Sophie. When she finds him sitting on her couch, she is shocked and afraid, asking if he's the guy who lives down the hall. Like, Arthur, right? And he says, I had a bad day. Wink, nudge, And she asks him to leave, saying that her little girl is asleep in the next room.
Dark night.
He turns to lock eyes with her, deadly serious, and repeats the gun to the head motion from earlier. We cut back to all the times they spent together and see that he was actually alone. All of it. I really like that they gave us this. For so many things that aren't spelled out, we need to know this.
That makes me appreciate, because that is a little, I don't think it's bad.
It's not like they saved it for the end and they're showing you everything was made up. It's at one point they give you a little bit.
Yeah, and that makes that all that other stuff that I never really thought about until hearing you talk about it, the idea of how much of any of this is real.
Mm-hmm.
So it is nice and important to have this one very obvious, very big example of that.
Yeah.
Because then when you look at the rest of it, you cast those same doubts. Which, like
Yes.
I said, I didn't really appreciate until hearing you say, like, oh yeah, what of any of this is real?
And there goes it's like the only person, even if it was imaginary, that like had his back or
that
cared
for
about him or
saw
something.
him
So it turns out that, I mean, you can argue how much your mom even cares for you. She seems to be pretty preoccupied with some. Sorry,
not your mom. She doesn't.
Nobody argues that. But now he just has nobody.
Yeah. Ambiguously, the scene ends with him alone in the hallway walking back to his apartment. We have that terribly uncomfortable beat between them where he's staring at her, just fucking like eyes through her soul, and puts, the fake gun to his head with his fingers. And then he's just walking down the hallway and we never see her again. And to me, it's perfectly reasonable to read anything into this scene based on what we've seen, that he got the point and he got kicked out, or that she was his next victim. And Todd Phillips has said that he thought that was insane, that people thought that he could have killed her, and that there was actually a shot later in the film of her seeing what's happening on TV at the climax of the film. And so she's definitely alive, and I believe she's cast in the sequel. So
I never got that either time I watched it.
Yeah.
That like he would have killed her, but I could see it.
It was so ominous the way he was staring at her, and then we're
the next scene is the cops at his apartment going, why were you just in this woman's house?
Well, but then we get this sort of moment where we're realizing none of those things were real. Is the character having this reckoning as well? We don't necessarily know that, and he's coming off of a horrible experience. So
yeah, I wonder what he's thinking. Well, she's just having an off day. This isn't standard behavior for you, that you must just be having a weird day. Or is he also thinking like, she doesn't recognize me?
Yeah.
Is he doubting himself in this moment? Because he doesn't say anything about that. He's not like,
he has almost no dialogue there.
It's me, Arthur.
There's no super obvious that.
Yeah. But what about the diner and the hospital? And
remember when you said it was cool that those 3 guys were killed?
Yeah.
You don't remember that?
Yeah.
And also he does let when the 2 guys come later on and he kills the big guy, he does let the other guy go. So I think that he holds some kind of place for people that he thinks have been kind to him.
Yes.
Even if she hadn't actually been kind to him.
She hadn't been mean
She did talk
either.
to him. Yeah, she hadn't been mean. She
acknowledged his existence, which is a lot for him.
And even if it's imaginary, she has been like a positive symbol to him. So I don't know why he would kill her.
Well, the next day, he visits his mother in the hospital, and he's like, all those years you told me there was something wrong with me, and I have this condition, and you know what? This is just who I really am. And it's starting to sound like a lot of people we've seen over the years who are off their meds, and now I'm seeing things differently. And,
I mean, they have a point in the sense of like, I guess you would be this way naturally, but natural isn't good.
Yeah.
It's all like random bullshit, so.
Sure, yeah.
This is the way I'm supposed to be.
As he takes the pillow from behind her
I was meant for polio.
As he takes the pillow from behind her head, Arthur says, I used to think that my life was a tragedy, but now I realize that it's a fucking comedy. And the camera pulls close on his face as Penny is smothered in silence. I gotta say, when I was rewatching The Sopranos a couple years ago, and Tony is visiting his mother in the hospital after having a very, very, very contentious relationship. I was like, oh my God, this is the part where he fucking smothers her or whatever. And then he doesn't do it. He like walks out pissed off. And I'm like, what am I thinking of? And it was this. But yeah, man, that is a fucking intense moment, dude.
The idea that he doesn't really show much of a reaction in this scene either is like, again, is that the reality of him and their relationship, that like doing this was nothing? Not literally nothing, but like he's just like...
Yeah, he's emotionless about it. You know?
Yeah.
No, it's a fucking comedy. You know, like...
Let me go put my makeup on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're in some way seeing a guy who, in the first half of the movie, he feels a lot and he feels deeply and he feels a lot of pain. And as his transformation completes, and there's obviously a lot of emotion in the climax of the film, but I think there's also a sort of separation happening where he's going a bit numb, he's going a bit dead inside, and he's kind of freeing himself from those things that caused him pain before by not caring anymore. Sure, you know. At the apartment, Arthur plays a tape of the Murray Franklin show and practices his entrance as well as the dialogue before delivering a knock-knock joke that ends with him shooting himself on air. Again, this is pretend in his apartment. He has killed his mom at this point, and now we see intends to kill himself. My autocorrect says mill himself. Cool.
I'd pay to see that. What?
To personify this transformation, the next Joker dance occurs in a makeover montage with makeup and green hair dye. I will note that you cannot color dark hair like that without bleaching it first. As he puts on his makeup, Arthur looks at an old photo of his mother. On the back, it says, "Love your smile, T.W." Again, giving some credibility to his delusional mother that there was something with Thomas Wayne at one point. The scene is interrupted when Arthur's doorbell rings. He grabs a pair of scissors, but it's just Gary and Randall from work. They see the makeup and ask if he got a new job. Well, no. Are you going down to the protest? No. I just stopped taking my medication. I feel a lot better now.
That's like what you'd never want to hear from a friend or something.
Cool,
like
I gotta
that.
go.
All of his responses in this part are very weird.
Giant red flags.
Yeah, just hardly even grounded in the scenario. Like
we're sorry to hear your mom died. He's like, yeah, whatever. So anyway,
I got that gig.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
it's my big break.
Yeah, all of his answers don't even seem to be related to. Like none of the stuff is just landing, and he's just saying whatever he wants to say.
Yeah. Randall starts talking about the cops sniffing around, and he wants Arthur to clear his name. But Arthur stabs him in the face with those scissors, and this scene is one of the most realistic and disturbing movie deaths that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
As Gary, the other character, is crying in the corner, pleading for him to stop, and it's like, you know, the scissors get like stuck in his head and he's beating him against the wall to try to get them back out of his head, and there's blood spraying everywhere. And my wife turns to me as I'm watching this again on Friday and says, I just fucking hate this movie. I mean, it is, every time I've seen this part is horrific.
I am too desensitized, I guess, because it was like, I've seen plenty of movies where the violence did upset me, and this I was just like, whatever.
Wow, that's I've told some people like horror movies are generally too much for me and shit that's like really gnarly, but especially when it's realistic. You know, I can watch fucking Die Hard movies and not think anything of it, but like stuff like this is really troubling.
The scissors in the eye
it's too
was
real.
Like a little bit of a kind of physical response.
And then the bashing into the fucking wall while the blood splattering, and he's, oh God, yeah, it's.
But as you
revolting.
described that just makes me think of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'm like laughing. So
what?
Without spoiling
the end of that movie?
Maybe, who knows? If you haven't seen the movie, you should watch it. It's pretty good.
That is a movie that I will always forget because it's such a small part of that movie. 2 hours of that movie are completely nonviolent, I think, aside from maybe the Bruce Lee fight. And
that's pretty silly.
And so I will think of that movie and want to watch it. And every time I get to the end, I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. Oh, I did not remember
we were
how gnarly this
movie,
gets.
I watched that in the theater twice, and I was laughing in that scene because it's so ridiculous. Both in the sense of like, I hate these people in real life. The Manson, they're such fucking garbage people. So this fun alternate reality where they didn't murder a whole bunch of people is like a release. But also that violence, again, is so ridiculous. Like, it's clearly a dummy being tossed around. It's just it's just incredibly silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
Where this is not that, but the repeated like head slamming just makes me think of that. Or Hateful Eight is the same thing. 2 hour slow burn.
That one I've only seen once, I think. I mostly just remember Kurt Russell smashing the real historic Martin guitar.
$40,000, $100,000 guitar.
Yeah.
I think Hateful Eight is one where like, I saw old people get out and walk up after they sat through this movie for 2 hours.
I haven't seen that. You're turning me into this. Jesus Christ.
Without spoiling it, it's like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I also haven't seen that.
A very long.
Oh,
you haven't
really?
seen that either? Oh, those are both good movies.
You're a strange person, Evan.
That's true.
Long dramas with like fun, tense dialogue, interesting characters that explode in violence in the last moment.
I would say that Hateful Eight, to my memory anyway, was more of a, typically slow Western versus Hollywood is much more like a snappy dialogue, like bright colored Tarantino kind of movie to me.
Like Ocean's 11.
No, it's not like that. I mean,
they're not whip smart.
No,
it's just
so,
it up.
It's so different. They're both so different than
but
anything
I think Once
else
Upon a
he's
Time in
done.
Hollywood feels kind of Western because the Brad Pitt character is like the classic real man, broken and violent and tough guy and all this kind of shit.
Well, anyway, we can go on for a while about that.
That's what we're talking about today, right?
Right, yes. The recent works of Tarantino. Now, blood covers the wall and Arthur's white painted face, which, they interrupted mid-makeup. And he even jump scares Gary as he walks past the body to get out.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead. You can leave.
The only thing funny about this scene is really dark, but the fact that Gary cannot reach the lock to get out, he has to ask Arthur for help.
Like, oh, shit. Oh, God.
And
Arthur.
Yeah, it's probably scary.
Yeah, and so he goes and he unlocks the door, but then he stands in front of it and says, "You're the only one who was ever nice to me." And he like kisses him on the forehead and opens the door. And yeah, Jesus Christ, man.
The proximity of all of that is like super tense.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that he is so unpredictable. You have a good reason to think that he might also hurt you. And that's super scary because now the other guy got like a surprise attack. You're going to be like an audience member and watch this stuff happen if he comes after you or something. And it's like playing Resident Evil games or something where the tension is just, it's not for no reason, but they don't have to do anything anymore in order to make it like scary.
Well, and that's where the scare is not when you're fighting the monster.
Yeah.
Not for the scare is when you're worried about it about to happen.
Yeah, it's like Alien or something.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah, he's
When's
got
it coming?
Like walk around this. There's like a huge dead man, and then Arthur
And the murderer.
blocking a hallway. This is the only escape route, and he is like so disconnected that he thinks it's funny to make a joke.
He's like,
to
"Hey,
scare you.
Do you watch the Murray Franklin show?
Yeah,
you want to see me
terrified.
on there tonight?" And then pretends to scare him and all that, or pretends to attack him. That whole thing is so fucked. And I think that a lot of the speculation about this movie, are like, oh man, this is gonna glorify the Joker's violence and all this stuff. And I'm like, if you watch any of this and think this is cool, like you were already like that.
You know what this guy needs? This guy needs a sweet dragon back tattoo. Maybe a little more screen time saying cool things.
But I do think that part of the reason I don't think that it's like in any way irresponsible is that like I also, after watching King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, I had some recent 4K movies that I hadn't got around to, and so I also watched some more gangster movies. And I think that Goodfellas, for example, even though all of its characters end up meeting a terrible demise and their lives fall apart because of their choices and all these things. I think that movie tries much harder to make these things look cool and make these guys look really aspirational in a way that this film does not.
Yeah.
For all the things that it doesn't give you straight up, the violence is always
horrific.
Real and horrific and never sugarcoated.
It's not a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's not anything like that.
And that is one thing I really appreciate about it, is that when you see violence in film, it should be this disturbing. You know?
If it's trying to make any kind of statement. I mean, that's part of why I like Quentin Tarantino movies, because I heard it described the other day. They are basically cartoons for adults.
Sure.
They're just like, nobody talks like that. Things don't play out like this. But that's okay because it's not real. And that's the escape of it and the novelty of seeing it.
Yeah, the exaggeration and movie references, the pastiche of different styles, And
so I think you could, like, a lot of movies, especially action movies, you could throw in that same boat of, like, this is not what violence is in real life. Violence is, like, sucks. It's terrible and frightening and, like, scars people forever.
Yeah.
To me, it's kind of funny to say that this is glorifying something when clearly nothing about this dude's life is enviable. Yeah, like, if something's going to make somebody want to do something like that, why wouldn't you say that about John Wick or something, where scores of people are killed and it looks awesome the whole time, and he dresses well, and there's a sweet soundtrack and
kind
stuff. Like, how is that not
missing the forest for the trees if you're going after this movie for that?
Yeah, like, it seems like you're trying to deter people who are in a, like, bad headspace from doing stuff or something.
Well, the only thing I'll say that your point is still correct, that if you're a person who saw this and was like, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You already had something wrong with you.
Yeah, and I think that media in general, whether that's music, movies, video games, the things that we spend our time on and consuming, they do have an impact on us, but I don't believe they're just cold introducing these things to us. I believe that you're connecting to it already based on something that's happening in your life.
But a lot of times the argument or the thought about this when we're talking about those kind of things is that, like, even if that's the case, if we weren't giving these messed up people these messed up things to consume, maybe there'd be less issues with them. That's the argument or the worry.
For sure.
Even though it's only them who are reacting poorly to it, and there are very few of them.
Exactly.
If they just weren't there, we wouldn't have to worry about it at all.
Yeah. I'm very much like an anti-censorship. We grew up in the PMRC, parental advisory era. I've always been very much against that. But also, being a very obsessive kind of person, I've witnessed why maybe if you listen to the same fucking CD every day of your life, maybe you don't want it to be that one or whatever, whatever it is. Whatever you're going through is only amplified by the art that you consume, but it doesn't start with the art. And so I think that's kind of the misconception.
And then especially when this is a movie that, for the most part, like you're saying, doesn't glorify this. It doesn't make this look anything like desirable.
Yeah.
But even with that, I would say the line that comes up that we're about to see, the one that I feel like I saw maybe even before I saw this movie, the what happens when you cross so long, like that is the only point where I'm like, I could see people taking that the wrong way, which is a little bit of the point. That's you're supposed to in that moment be like, okay, I get it. I understand you, the character, but I could see other people going like, yeah, that's why I suck. Because society
that's a reasonable reaction.
Yeah. I think
you were literally brain damaged. That's why you are so broken. And that's the whole idea of, like, everyone has something they can point to and be like, this happened to me. Society failed me. I'm broken, and that's why I hate you all. And
Well, I was going to save this, but one thing that's more apparent in King of Comedy and Taxi Driver is that we follow this mentally ill guy. We spend a lot of time with him throughout the course of the film, all the way up to this horrific thing that he does. And in the epilogue, he's celebrated for it. Society embraces this guy and paints him as a hero because, oh, well, you did it to this pimp, and oh, well, you did it to these rich people who were casting you out, and you made something of yourself, or, whatever it is. It's sort of like people watch those movies and just miss the ending, they just remember all the other things and like, oh yeah, and I love Travis Bickle with a mohawk. I think he looks awesome. It's an iconic performance.
Everybody
right?
wishes they were tough and could get tough and stop taking shit from the man,
Yeah, but they show to what an unhealthy degree these people take those delusions and those fixations. Like all of these films, they have a fixation on some outward person who's causing their situation and, would make it all better if whatever, right? And they all have this sort of thing. And once they act on it, in the end, there's some distortion of reality where it kind of becomes satire and the guy's on the front of newspapers or he gets a book deal or whatever it is, and everyone loves him for this. And there's a shade of that in the end. The riots in the streets and the clown protests throughout the movie and things like that. But I think it's more in the way that the Riddler had this weird cult following in the Batman, Matt Reeves' version. And you have these people who are disenfranchised and they're upset and they're fighting back against this system and this corruption and all this stuff. And they wind up joining this fucking cause, right? But I don't think that really casts judgment on what he does. I think when it comes to his acts, it tries to be more objective. It tries to show you how disorienting and fucked up the scene is, how they shoot it and all this shit. And they don't really cast judgments on it.
Well, I don't feel like the movie casts all the rioters with the same negative light that the Batman clearly casts the Riddler cult or whatever.
Well, there's that one shot on TV of like, yeah, fuck the rich, fuck the, the whole system, man, burn it to the ground. There's elements of that. But I also don't think the movie justifies his actions in that. I think they show the reality of it and that a lot of people feel this way, but
yeah, and that people react to it, even though he says multiple times, like, I didn't do it for a reason. I didn't do any of this.
Yeah, exactly.
But that makes sense. It was something that was going to happen anyway with their city, and it just needed some kind of spark to set it off, and people are going to find whatever meaning they want in it.
Yeah. Now we cut to that one song that was used for Happy Gilmore and every baseball game I've ever been to.
Na, 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 na.
Hey! Yeah. And a fully realized Joker exits the apartment building in his full Marini Dark Prince Charming look. And he has his first full Joker celebratory murder dance that we've seen in costume.
Murder dance.
And this time, the cops find him and a chase ensues.
They're just kind of like standing at the top of the stairs for part of the dance.
You see this fucking guy? Like,
he's got good moves.
He's pretty slick.
Yeah, well, let's wait till he gets through this.
You're a really good dancer.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't notice the first time, even though I've seen the scene in the trailer, very early on, maybe after his first work experience where he's walking home, he's walking up those stairs, and it's like super
arduous, like climb.
Yeah, it's depressing, and he feels confined. And even though this is also one of the first shots in the movie that, like, this is a beautiful movie.
Oh,
just
yeah.
like the colors are awesome. Yeah, every shot is
and some of those
really
shots
nicely.
that are like outside at night in the dark rain and the little glimpses of neon from the storefronts. Like, oh my
It
god,
looks
It's like a real cool color treatment.
Yeah.
Kind of warm tones, but there's like some matrix greens.
Yeah,
And then there's
little
also
flashes of
this
color.
Yeah, this just like sunset glow.
There was one scene in particular, it might have been when he gets in the fridge, that was really nice, and it had the very obvious thing, but which didn't feel obnoxious like it does sometimes, where like everything is blue and then the outside orange is light. Or the outside light is orange, so that blue and orange contrast, which is like really good.
Well, this was nominated for Best Cinematography, Lawrence Sher, and well-deserved because we're talking about the color grading. We just watched The Killer, David Fincher. We were talking about that earlier. And to me, I'm watching this going like, I love the way David Fincher movies look, but I'm like, this soaked in piss yellow thing is like too much in this one. It's just, it's over the top.
I feel like that's what David Fincher, and I love his movies also, but that's what his movies are lacking, is that like the contrasting color. So every scene or every shot is mainly just like the disgusting green and blue or whatever it is.
Blue, green, gray.
Yeah, it
the
doesn't
whole
have
time.
like the light that's the exact
offsets
opposite
it.
color
Right.
or some kind of clothing or something that really stands out, which is why David Fincher movies feel more
bleak
than this does to me.
I mean, I think that this was also taking influence from Seven.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of just the rainy, decaying city.
Yeah, the city is the enemy, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing just feels oppressive and kind of for as big as it is, kind of claustrophobic and just, you just can't get away from it. You can't wipe it off you.
I just like that contrast of the first time he goes up the stairs, he's going up.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's the end of a bad day. And this is his transformation. Now it's like the easiest thing in the world to go down them. So easy. He's dancing.
Light as a feather.
Yeah. No burden at all.
This borders on a Wes Anderson color palette.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it's mid-century modern.
It's getting there. Yeah. I thought at first that this might be the staircase from The Exorcist, but that ended up not being the case.
It's the famous staircase where they had to ask people to stop coming here and doing the Joker dance.
Yeah.
I live here. Please stop doing that.
I actually just saw cell phone footage the other day of Joaquin filming this scene from a first floor, I think, apartment building through a foggy window right next to him at the top of the stairs as he's about to begin. And
funny.
Yeah, you can kind of see him waiting for the cue and they're okay, yeah, and then doing his fucking thing. But yeah, it'd be so weird. Oh yeah, they're just filming this iconic sequence
for the next 5 hours
outside my bedroom.
Makes me think of a Chappelle show where they have this outtake thing and they're talking about Charlie Murphy getting into character prior to the take. And there's this, I don't know, they're on a golf cart or something like that. And he's just bouncing and jiggling his shoulders and stuff like that. Just, 6 seconds
he's
before
one of
it
the
starts.
Pimps, is that what it is?
Yeah.
For Player Haters Ball.
Yeah. And I could picture Joaquin same kind of thing. He's snapping his fingers or he starts the dance or something before the take starts.
So in this chase sequence, first Arthur is hit by a taxi and then finds cover among the other clowns in a subway car. They're on their way to the protest and do not welcome the police presence as they chase him.
Shea Wiggum is so good. What a great actor.
He's one of those guys I look up. I'm God, I know this guy. And I look up and I'm like, oh, he's in half a dozen films I've rated 10 out of 10. Always playing small parts.
He'd been in stuff before that, but the first thing I noticed him in was he was in Boardwalk Empire, which also was Michael Shannon was in that.
I think he was also in Take Shelter with Michael Shannon as well.
He was in something else I saw where an earlier movie where he had a smaller part still. He's been working for a long time. I think he's one of those guys that just hit a point where now everyone was like, this guy's awesome. It'd be a pleasure to have him act in our movie.
Right. Yeah.
But that whole come on, no eyes are dumb, blah, blah, blah. It ends up shooting that guy, and then his pleading, screaming when the people start beating him, don't do this, do it. Yeah. That scene upset me.
Joker,
more than the apartment killing.
Joker here incites a fight and steals a clown's mask to put it on over his makeup, which not unlike Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight and his real life friend as well. I believe there's a few intentional nods to Heath in this third act. As you mentioned, the cop's gun goes off during this fight, and Arthur joyfully dances and laughs as they are beaten nearly to death by this mob.
That's another moment that's very how unhinged he is.
And that's a genuine smile. That's a genuine
the smile, but
laugh.
also the dancing of he is so overcome by this moment. He has to dance. He has to do this little movement to release the energy of it.
Well, and the other thing is, for someone who was just recently in their exact position, getting beat by a gang of people twice, he has taken all the wrong lessons from that experience.
He's just I'm glad it's you and not me.
Exactly.
You're trying to stop
I'm
me.
glad to be on the side that's inflicting the pain now. I just watched the Hunger Games prequel, and I was very reticent about, so you're going to make a prequel that focuses on the villain, but you're going to make us root for this guy, And they do, and they humanize him, and in the end, he kind of becomes the thing he's fighting against because we know where he ends up.
It sounds like you're saying the movie was good, but I'm also I don't think the villain always needs to be humanized. You need enough to connect, but some villains can just be bad.
Well, but that's the thing is he wasn't, he's a messy, conflicted person, and we really do see the goodness in him at points in this film. And so I'm like, that's a weird choice to make us feel for him in these ways, and then to have his ultimate conclusion be but I'm going to make them suffer like they made me suffer. It felt like a leap to make us feel all those things, and then he still turns into that guy, you know? Like, I need another movie or two to get to that point, you know? Because Arthur is just like so miserable all the time. It makes sense. He's only seeing things from his perspective. He's not...
Can't get out of his own pain.
Exactly, yeah. Like, he's begging for empathy and unable to empathize with anyone who's not as fucked up as he is.
It's interesting in this part, too, that it shows some smarts on his part by grabbing the mask and blending in with the crowd that much more. You don't feel like he's dumb, but this actually shows like a degree of smartness
improvisation
to me. Yeah, he's not just getting through and happens to wiggle his way through the crowd or something like that. He has the wherewithal to like, I'm evading the police, and what could I do in this moment to blend in with the crowd and stuff like that.
And I think that there are people who have criticized this movie, like I alluded to, where it's like, oh, they just wanted to tell this story, and to get it made, they just squeezed in Thomas Wayne and the Wayne killings and called him Joker in the end or whatever. To me, there's so much connective tissue to all that it's like a real oversimplification.
Even though I fundamentally do not believe this is a version of the character that would do anything.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, though, is that people were like, but he's not like the mastermind type and whatever. And I'm like, well, he's not, but that's kind of the point, is he doesn't become Joker till the fucking end of this movie.
But my thought is he's never going to be that character. This guy never becomes the guy who puts a cell phone in someone's stomach or who orchestrates anything elaborate. But I do think it's in the same way that maybe when we were talking about Imposter or something, where it sells me by the end, like this is an interesting and valid take on the idea of a character who is just purely chaotic and doesn't care about anything.
Yeah.
Even the idea that he's laughing all the time, like it's an interesting take on why he would be doing that. So that it's not, I don't know how this Joker does anything with or like against Batman.
Jack Napier is not giggling around all the time. Like, he starts acting that way after the Axis Chemicals thing.
Yeah, but he was also like
But to give this guy the laugh ahead of time is so much more interesting.
Well, and it contextualizes the character in a way that's better than the Jack Nicholson one, because the Jack Nicholson Joker is like just an asshole, but he's a guy you believe could actually put things together. He's like the right-hand man of the biggest gang in the city.
And he's a guy who's kind of, in a power war to take the top.
Yeah. And also
homicidal.
Sociopath. Yeah, exactly. Doesn't care about other people. Where this one is like, you get the pain of it, how it would twist someone in that way.
Yeah.
And also what it ultimately says about the idea where he's like, I'm not trying to do this for any reason. I'm fed up, but I'm going to do whatever I want. Like, that fits with the idea of the Joker.
Backstage at the studio, Joker meets Murray Franklin and his producer assistant guy, played by Mark Maron. They ask about his clown makeup. Are you trying to make some kind of political statement here? And he plays dumb, not knowing about the cop killing on the subway or the protests or whatever. He reminds Murray, you called me a Joker when you mentioned me on the show. Could you introduce me as Joker? And Murray kind of shrugs it off like, Joker it is, okay. And as they walk away, close the door, Joker puts the gun to his head and prepares for his big moment.
This is another one of those parts where he speaks pretty well, too.
Yeah, he's very much in control, like really in control for the first time. Murray plays the clip of Arthur bombing at the comedy club, and Joker begins to lose himself in a dance behind the curtain.
The production assistant is like, get a load of this guy.
I love that.
What is this guy?
Yeah, you get one dude standing there, like another guy's just kind of doing his work, getting ready, and then the other guy is like, what the fuck is happening right here? He comes out on stage dancing and kissing the Dr. Ruth character.
And these are the best dance moves. He does like a double spin. And like, that was so smooth.
Right. Yeah.
This Arthur, you're a great dancer.
But the whole inclusion of the Dr. Ruth surrogate and him kissing her is like Dark Knight Returns. And he's like, oh, this is exactly how I imagined it here and all this. I will say, though, with those Dark Knight Returns things, as I'm watching this the first time, it's like, wait a second. Is he going to kill the audience? Like the fucking,
This clearly incapable, mentally deficient man managed to concoct some laughing gas or bombs.
No,
or
but more like a mass shooter thing, because that's what everyone was talking about at the time of. Anyway, he fails to land even a single joke, laughs at all the wrong times, and Murray tries to save the show by making fun of him. You know, it's like, well, why don't you tell us a joke? And he like pulls out the fucking notebook, and it takes forever, and he flips through the pages, and he goes, knock, knock. Like, you needed to look that up, buddy, you know?
That, I will say that joke, it's so fucked up, but like, I laughed at that joke.
Oh, yeah, this is the one of the few great jokes in the movie.
That's a great anti-comedy, anti-humor joke.
Yeah, like after a dramatic pause, Joker says, knock, knock, which we know is his big setup for the suicide. Murray cracks the joke, and he has to start over, so he says, knock, knock. Murray goes, who's there? Joker says, it's the police. Your son was hit by a drunk driver. He's dead.
Oh, my God.
And he's saying this like, oh my God, I love this joke. Everyone's going to laugh at it.
It's like a joke Bob Saget would tell to other comedians or something.
Okay, that was exactly my note, is that this is possibly the only good joke of the movie, but in a Norm Macdonald intentionally bombing sort of way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to take this way past the point of
It's so ridiculous
taste.
and uncomfortable that's where
That's why it's
laughter
funny.
comes from.
Yes. Now we're Arthur.
Yeah.
Murray says, that's not funny. It's not the kind of humor that we do on this show. And Joker says...
We make fun of mentally disabled people.
Yeah. Joker says, you know, it's just been a rough couple weeks ever since I killed those 3 Wall Street guys. And this is where I'm so impressed with De Niro's portrayal of Murray Franklin, because Murray steps up to the plate and he handles this very seriously. And I think back to, you know, the times we've lived through where you're having David Letterman be one of the most lasting, memorable commentaries in the aftermath of 9/11, you know, on American television. Like, you have these people who had to step up and handle this crazy moment, and he really does. And Joker rants that society decides what's right or wrong,
Just like
and
they
what's
decide
funny, what's
Mm-hmm.
not, and that he killed those guys because everyone is awful these days, saying that if it was me dying on the street, you'd walk right over me. As the conversation gets more and more hostile, Joker starts mocking Murray to turn the tables, and he's sort of taking control of the conversation. And then he gets deadly serious with the best close-up shot of the entire film. He's practically shaking with anger in his face. He's got tears in his eyes, and he says, people are awful. You're awful. Playing my video just to make fun of me. And then Murray lists off the victims and like, oh, well, you killed these people. Someone died today, blah, blah, blah. And Joker just laughs in his face at this. And it says, how about another joke, Murray? And what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? And this is the first time we see him escalating. He's yelling over Murray. He's trying to regain control of the conversation.
Because the murder in the apartment was like a reaction, almost a defensive thing.
Yes.
This is an act of aggression.
Yes. And prior to this, we think it's leading up to his suicide. But as that point in the conversation and that great close-up, you know, over the shoulder, the side profile where I was talking about him shaking and his eyes, and some great like YouTube breakdowns of this scene and the way that it's shot. They like break the usual 180 camera pan rule, and they go behind and they do these weird things to throw you off and set you at unease. And you can sort of see this transformation where, okay, that's when he changed his mind. That's when now Murray is the target of all of his frustration here.
Yeah, the rage is kicked in.
Exactly. And so what do you get when you cross a mentally ill loner with a society that abandons him and treats him like trash? I'll tell you what you get. You get what you fucking deserve. And he shoots Murray in the head. The crowd runs screaming. We cut wide to see the crowd running away. Joker briefly makes eye contact with the body and laughs to himself. He kind of takes it in. And this is a little bit like when Jack Nicholson talks to the corpse of the guy that he's fried a little bit, you know. Then he stands up and shoots Murray again and grabs the camera looking straight into it, again like Heath Ledger in those scenes he directed in The Dark Knight, trying to say Murray's famous tagline, and remember, that's life, but they cut it off in the middle.
Well, there's a moment in that scene, too, where it's feels like, again, like his little dance while the cops are getting beat,
Mm-hmm.
where like he stands up and like he doesn't know what to do, and he just has to have some kind of like
he
physical release.
He jerks around and he shoots him again, and then he throws the gun like he doesn't
know what to do with the gun.
Like he didn't plan any of this.
Yeah. I think that's a cool little touch. Like he's present, he knows what he's doing, he's prepared, and then there's also this other indicator that like. No, not entirely. You know, he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands, and you know,
Will Ferrell.
And I don't have this totally planned out. You know, like, oh, what from now? And like, oh yeah, what?
I thought I was gonna be dead. So
Yeah. And
what do I have any plans for this part?
Yeah, what do I do with this gun now?
And then he just runs up there, and remember, that's life.
Mm-hmm.
And as another cool nod to Dark Knight Returns, which is full of a lot of talking heads, like whole pages or half pages of talking heads, we get this cool shot where it kind of zooms out from the screen and we see a whole bank of TVs that are now reporting on Marie's death, and we're seeing the clip over and over, as media always does, of like,
look at this horrible thing. Don't forget, look at this horrible thing.
Watch our coverage of it and see it again in slow motion. Cut to the Cream song, White Room.
Get the money, dollar bills, y'all.
No, but like in the white room.
Yes, good song.
Which is great as we're leading up to the final scene of him in the white room.
This movie has a lot of songs that feels like from the 60s. It's like it takes place in the 80s, but it's capturing like a Vietnam era, like the chaos of society, and here's the music that went along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Joker watches the riots from the back of a police car. And this is a reversal of the earlier shot where he's on the sidewalk looking at the clown in the back of the taxi. Now he's the one looking out at the world, and he likes what he sees. This is also similar to Heath's police car escape, where he's sticking his head out the window like Ace Ventura, has a little bit of a duality there.
Yeah, that angled shot through the window reminds me of Dark Knight.
The cop car that he's in gets T-boned by a big truck, and rioters in clown masks pull his unconscious body from the wreckage.
It's an ambulance, I think.
Is
the
it?
reason that's noteworthy, because that really shows like, oh, these people have stolen an ambulance and used it as a ram.
Okay, I thought it was just like a stolen truck, but it's interesting to me that it's never explicitly said, do they know that is the cop car? Do they know he's the one, or are they just fucking shit up?
This time I kind of felt like it was intentional. The first time I had more of like, oh, that would just happened, and then they're like, oh, it's the guy, let's get him. But now it seemed like they were like freeing their hero.
This is another moment where I believe we could easily mark that he has died, and the rest is in his head, especially given what does follow. The Waynes are fleeing from a fancy theater as a lone clown stalks them down the alley.
What were they watching? The Gay Zorro?
I don't remember.
The Gay Blade of Zorro.
It made me think that the clowns must have rearranged the marquee or something.
No, it's just appropriate for that era. That's the original title of Zorro, The Gay Blade of Zorro.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Even though I'm not against the inclusion of the Waynes and all that.
I think this is one of the few things that people thought was too much.
Yeah, because there's not enough of them, especially as a unit, to make the scene have any more payoff, unless you care about Batman anyway.
I think the biggest weird choice about it
Dutch angle?
No.
Seriously.
Is the super rats in the background behind him, which I didn't notice the first million times I saw this, but they are there. No, what I think is odd is you've deliberately created this age gap between them.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur's 24 in this movie.
Then we're still including it.
Rough.
And it's sort of, what are you building up towards? He has said that Batman will never be in this universe. So it's like, what? It does make sense because he is the age where that would have happened. And this does, in a way, mimic Jack Napier in Batman 89 being the only other time that the Joker caused his parents' death, though indirectly here. I mean, the guy says, hey, Wayne, you get what you fucking deserve, and he shoots him. But yeah, that is an odd choice to include a setup that we'll never see. But this was also intended as a standalone film. It was never going to have a sequel. In fact, I do worry that having a sequel will answer too many of these great questions that we've been able to discuss about this.
I mean, I have faith in the movie they made here. I have enough faith to think that the next one could be really good. But it is like weird. Like, why does this movie doesn't need a sequel?
Yeah, what is this?
I want to see Lady Gaga Harley Quinn. I mean, who knows? Because I also was like, why do we need this movie?
Yeah.
So I don't,
any story can be good.
Joaquin especially, but I don't think Todd Phillips either would follow the success of that movie with an inferior concept. I don't think that they would do it, especially Joaquin, unless it was something really
worthwhile and interesting. Yeah.
The age difference gets me in this. If I'm supposed to think that this
the
Bruce,
Joker's not 75 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
They meet.
Like
So there's 3 of them actually. Guys.
Yeah, how
we'll find that. We'll meet the next 2 in the next movie.
Totally.
Dude, I heard they tried to make that canon. Like, I guess there was some mention of it in a recent, like, actual
that there
Batman
are 3
title
Jokers?
about the
I
3
feel like
Jokers.
I read something.
Yeah, and I'm like, what? That was you fuckers. Huh. Stop trying to make Black Label shit real.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. Is it doesn't have to be
It's
real.
a Killing Joke again. Like, oh, this is its own thing, but actually, now it's not.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it just made me think, like, how in the future would this guy be a dude that you struggled with physically,
or even mentally? This guy's not planning anything.
Yeah. The youngest looks to be late 30s, but probably in his 40s or something, and you look to be 10, maybe. So you're
this guy's gonna be 65 by the time you're suiting up.
Yeah, there's no way that you struggle with this guy in a fist fight.
Well, and this is a Bruce Wayne that, like, either if we go down this path, is either just like becomes like a really good guy and like spends money investing in the city, what everyone says Bruce Wayne is supposed to do and what he does, but like that's all.
I guess that's a possibility.
Or this is a guy who puts on like a ski mask and beats up muggers and stuff like that. Not dressing as Batman, but he is going out and like.
I don't know why they would include it if it's not expected that he becomes Batman.
Yeah, and that's why it feels like wrong.
Yeah.
Unnecessary.
Joker wakes up on the hood of the cop car. So the guys had pulled his bloody, broken body out of the car crash, out of the wreckage, thrown him up on the hood of the car, and a crowd cheers for him as he wakes up, and he brings himself to stand up on the hood. Overlooking this crowd, he begins to dance and notices blood coming from out of his mouth. Again, he runs his fingers across his lips to create a smile, but this one, soaked in blood, feels sincere again. Note, the crowd behind him cheers for the bloody smile before they see what he's done. That's weird. It's one of the only things that I'm like, mistake? Like, why?
Maybe the crowd in front cheered, and then the people in the back are like, "We're cheering now."
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, what's going on over there?
Just cheer.
Should we do that too?
Cut to another white room, identical to the one glimpsed earlier in the brief flashback of the mental hospital. Arthur laughs to himself in therapy. He tells a social worker, who's also a short-haired black woman, not dissimilar to the one we met earlier, and he says, "I'm just thinking of a joke." He cuts to the Wayne's murder for a second, and then he cuts back. You wouldn't get it. Under his breath, Arthur starts singing Murray's theme song, That's Life. In particular, the line, "Some people get their kicks stomping on a dream." That part really resonates here. And we cut to him walking down the asylum hall with bloody footprints as he begins to dance. In this final shot, he not only walks into the light, literally, but he does so as the song says, "I'm gonna roll myself in a big ball and die." As if this whole thing was a delusional fantasy before his death. And on top of that, he has subtle gray in his hair and his stubble that was not there before. So this could also be well into the future, perhaps even laughing about the creation of Batman when he thinks back to that attack in the alley. And this entire story is filled with contradictions. And as I mentioned, I'm slightly worried that we're going to get answers we don't want.
Yeah, but we're also going to meet Killer Croc. Like, we've got a new
Enchantress and Zatanna.
There's a new trouble in this town. It's a man by the name of Jervis Tech. He's going by the name Mad Hatter.
Toy maker.
Yeah.
But that's the end of the movie. And at the time, there were a lot of unanswered questions and different interpretations. And people are asking Todd Phillips, and he's like, "I will never, ever tell you the answers to these questions.
I like that.
Yes, I know them. We intentionally presented it this way. This is the film I want you to see. I will never tell you the answer."
He knows his thought, but that doesn't make it any more real than like your interpretation of it.
Well, yeah, but it's weird, though, that now the story will continue. So some of those arguments will be put to bed forever with the existence of the sequel, however this plays out.
Based on his interpretation.
But he is older here, which is very interesting.
This movie stands on its own. So even whatever that movie does, that doesn't, you could still just look at this movie in a vacuum and go,
for sure,
what does this movie say? What do I think?
Yeah.
If I've learned anything from like Neon Genesis Evangelion, it's that you could just double down on the confusion.
Yeah.
And you could just go further. So by the time you do your 4 things in and you're 4 times as confused. Just keep it going.
The sequel is going to take place 10 years before this movie, but he's inexplicably the Joker in it.
Yeah, it's just going to make more questions, and that's what you should do.
Well, any Easter eggs that we didn't talk about?
He's using Bill Finger brand clown makeup.
You made that joke on the last episode. There is a special thanks to some comic creators at the end. I caught Frank Miller and Brian Bolland in particular. I did want to rattle off a couple things from King of Comedy and Taxi Driver that I noted in my marathon movie day on Friday. The second scene of King of Comedy, these are all King of Comedy here, is a fantasy of his talk show comedy hero inviting him on the show. He has a crush on a black girl who barely recognizes him, rehearses his own TV appearance in his mom's apartment with her yelling at him from the other room off camera. The mention of keeping it clean before he goes on air. The mention that he's destined for greatness, an exact quote. And ends with the character, as I mentioned, celebrated for his violent acts rather than condemned. Taxi Driver. The look of New York City, of course. Fixation on society going to shit. Obsession with certain scapegoats for his pain.
Transformation.
Yes. But, he first fixates on this woman and then fixates on the candidate and then fixates on the pimps, he just kind of is looking for some external escape. He watches TV with a gun in his hand, just like Arthur. It ends with a violent climax. It's nearly fatal. And
practicing his...
In the mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. It ends with, nearly fatal climax, and the protagonist has an unbelievably happy ending, as if it wasn't even real, which
maybe
Scorsese
an actually fatal climax.
And De Niro say that it's a real ending, but I understand getting the love letter from, or the thank you letter from Jodie Foster's parents at the end of it. Like, you saved our daughter. I'm so happy. And, we've got her back home and she's doing well again. And then the final scene, he's driving the taxi again, and Sybil Shepherd gets in the back, and she's like, I saw you on TV and whatever. I read about you in the paper, whatever it was. And this is a guy who made you so uncomfortable. He took you on a first date at a porn theater.
Times Square porn
theater. Yeah, all this weird shit. And, then you find out he murdered some people, and you're like, I need to give him a try.
Listen, the dating pool is hard, You got to grasp on to whatever you can find.
It's been shown that ladies love...
They want to protect her,
Well, they love true crime stuff, and they like how many girls have lady boners for Jeffrey Dahmer?
Too many, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't know what it is, but
again, our problem with society is women, and I think we need to do something about it.
You watch Gotham by Gaslight, right? Because that was that movie's thesis.
Yeah.
I could have my timeline mixed up, so if I'm wrong. But I'm not wrong. I'm going to stand to that until proven otherwise.
Future Ben has been around so much, the different timelines get muddled in his brain.
Yeah.
I'm living all timelines at once.
He's talking Manhattan.
Yeah.
Here's this egg. That's from the show. I don't know if you guys watched the show.
I missed that one.
Here's this egg.
What show?
Or Attack on Titan. I won't say anything more. If anyone likes that and hasn't finished it yet, watch that show.
Oh, about quadrupling down on confusion?
And weird time stuff.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But...
Get to the fucking point.
Well, if you guys would stop derailing me and let me talk for once.
Oh my God, the other day?
Just talking about how violence and the examination of these kind of characters and that people taking the wrong idea from them and the wrong message.
Yeah.
I think that's the guy who tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan.
I've got Reagan!
Was obsessed with Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
That was and that's after that movie.
Yeah.
Was that in any way tied to that or?
honestly, I'd have to look that up.
From when
again.
you were alive.
Was it John Hinkle? Was that his name?
John Hinckley, I think.
Okay, yeah. I'd have to check into that. I don't remember if it was directly from the film. But yeah, it is weird. Both of those movies, and I think in a very ironic way, celebrates the carnage. That they've not tried to sugarcoat this character and make him seem cool the whole time. Like they make him seem desperate and fucked up, and when you finally see the lengths he's willing to go, it's revolting.
Yeah, it's a reflection of the audience. You're supposed to go, this guy sucks. Yeah, you're not supposed to go,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's kind of like, man, people are going to walk out of here going like, that was so good. That they're kind of making fun of that, at the end of the film. And this one doesn't really do that.
This one is genuinely like, what a cool guy. Look at him dancing down that hallway.
No, this one is like...
Such a sweet style.
This one is like, wow, this guy just fucked up shit. He just unleashed this whole fucking can of worms and like, oh, wait, he's locked up again? So it at least gives you the seed of doubt of like, oh, well, he got all these people on his... Well, did he?
Mm-hmm. How'd you get from there
How
to
much
there?
of that was real? Like, is this just the adoration he always dreamt of? Mm-hmm. If he can't have it in comedy, he's going to have it for violence. I don't know. It could be exactly the same way he imagined Sophie's character. Yeah, fuck those guys.
It was a dark comedy all the time. Hi, doggy. You're my favorite customer. Keep the change.
I have no idea what she... I've never seen it.
That's where he was trying to make a drama, and then it became...
I know of it.
Yeah, it became like a cult classic because of how strange and bad it is. And then later on, he's like, actually, I was making a comedy the whole time. I
would recommend The Disaster Artist. It is a funny movie about the making of that movie with a side-by-side comparison at the end of the scenes they recreated and the actual movie. And it goes on for a while, like quite a few scenes, and you get to see that it actually is that ridiculous. But I wonder if an uninitiated person would watch The Disaster Artist and be like, what? This movie is dumb. I don't believe this. It's so unbelievably dumb. And the way this guy talks, you could be watching it and going, what is James Franco doing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Room is, kind of an entertaining movie just because of how strange it is. But
it's one to watch with a group of friends, I think. It's kind of...
Okay, thanks for rubbing it in.
That's the only setting I saw it in was people like, oh my God, you got to see this. And we're all laughing.
I was trying to watch it on like my PlayStation Portable at an airport and they got to like the awkward sex scene. I'm like, I can't watch this in public.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But I don't even think you need to watch the movie. You could just read
with his
book.
Butt close up.
That's very extreme. The guy who played
like
Mark, one of the main characters, wrote a book about the whole thing.
Greg
Sestero.
Yeah.
That book is really good and really interesting. I like that a lot more than The Disaster Artist.
Word. Pros.
Joaquin Phoenix's entire performance, but again, I want to make special note of
Oscar-winning performance.
The physicality of it,
yes.
Every aspect of the changing, even though it's the transformation into a bad character, the use of dance in that way is really neat. And that's like, it's easy to take for granted the skills of a great actor, but like the physical aspect of that, being able to channel that in a way that like, I don't think about dance that much in my life, but to see that used in this movie this way is very, very cool.
One thing that I was really struck by watching Scarface last night. I haven't seen it in 10, 15 years. Pacino's body language. Throughout the whole movie, he's got this air of confidence in the way he sees himself, and he's going to be somebody, and he wants to have the nice clothes and the car and the women on his arm and all this stuff, and he wants the status of class and everything that comes with it. And all of these scenes, once he's made it and he's in his big tux and all this, he's still all hunched over and looks like a fucking depressed teenager or something. And he sticks out among all the other rich people all the time of like, he always wanted to insert himself into this world, but he didn't come from this world.
You can't fake it.
Exactly.
Never actually be that.
Yeah. I liked seeing that movie as a 38-year-old and taking away much different things than I would when I saw it when I was 22, Evan, do you have some pros to add?
Yeah, mostly just the visual stuff.
Yeah.
The film looks really nice. They do a good job of kind of subtly taking you back in time. They don't have like a ton of indicators that
Not a bunch of neon exercise clothes. This
Yeah,
is the 80s, guys.
it's not
a lot
like
of George Michael on the radio. Well, that's some using older music kind of works to its advantage then, because if they were playing 80s music,
makes it a little more timeless.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, if you watch something that's from the 1950s, and they'll make sure to include some 57 Bel Airs and some stuff that really, this is the golden oldies.
If it was really aping Scorsese, you should have just been loaded with Rolling Stones song.
But you do
I
get
see a red door.
you do get hints of Murray and whoever the producer guy is.
Mark
They're
Maron.
rocking like leisure suits, so you do get this. Okay, cool. Interesting. This
feels accurate. It doesn't feel like it's in your face. Like, you
Yeah.
know what? Good example of this movie everyone hates, but Wonder Woman 1984. I watched it a second time and was like, oh, I get it. This isn't like Hot Tub Time Machine. We're in the 80s now. Oh my God. Right? They're making an 80s movie. Like it feels like an 80s action campy
The
kind
tropes
of
and
movie.
style of the movie is 80s.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
it felt like the Snyderverse doing an 80s movie. It just happens to be set there. So like, the background, the mall, the extras are dressed in a certain way, but like it didn't feel like that's the whole point of the movie, you know?
the new version of something that could have come out 30 years ago.
Yeah.
The performance is awesome. The actor pool seems like kind of recycled a lot, and this is what people do.
Well, yeah, you'll be watching a movie and you'll be like, oh, look, it's Iron Man and the Hulk and Mysterio. Zodiac, for example.
Yeah. Totally.
It's Drew Carey's brother.
Diedrich Bader? Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's his friend. It's his cross-dressing brother is in Zodiac.
Oh, okay. Wow.
He's maybe the Zodiac
It's
killer.
a deep cut.
Just spoiler, he's the guy at the very end.
Arthur Lee Allen?
Maybe? I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Okay.
But I really like when an actor isn't themselves or hasn't established one of those personalities that they can't escape. You can't get around the fact that we're talking about De Niro, it just seems very similar in a lot of these roles. And maybe that's why you get cast, but that doesn't fit for every character.
Yeah.
So like Joaquin's ability to his like voice inflection and his ability to be off and be weird and not be the Joker that we kind of know.
Well, you can see why he was drawn to something like this because it gives him so much freedom for interpretation.
For sure.
He seems very obsessed with that.
Well, what you were talking about of like, you might cast an actor because he does that thing. Like you might cast De Niro for the wrong reasons. You might cast him to recreate this sort of presence on screen when you're not casting him for his incredible range. You're not going, oh, well, this is the guy who played Max Cady, in Cape Fear, as well
Travis
as
Bickle and Jake LaMotta from Raging Bull.
Yeah,
and
like
the dad in Brooklyn Story or whatever. The one where he's the buster, Bronx Tale, yeah.
Well, yeah, and like yesterday, as I was mentioning, I continued this kind of binge with these actors, and I watched Goodfellas, and then I watched Scarface, for the first time in a long time with these movies. Afterward, I was like, okay, that was a lot of heavy, violent movies. But I was struck thinking, like, Pacino's performance in Scarface is fucking incredible. And I think a lot of times you might just think of it as sort of the most exaggerated parts and, things that have been emulated and made fun of. But, like, contrast that with Michael Corleone, who I think raises his voice one time in the whole trilogy, or maybe the first two, but pretty much raises his voice one time. And he's very calm and controlled and deliberate. Polar opposite characters. And then I thought, my Thanksgiving tradition, because The Irishman came out on Thanksgiving, I watch it every year. And I thought, you know what? Another performance of his that's not dissimilar to like the Jimmy Hoffa accent he did. It's this HBO film where he played Jack Kevorkian. It's called You Don't Know Jack.
I remember the advertising for that.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen it in years. I remember being blown away. It's like him and Susan Sarandon, John Goodman, like fucking great cast. And I watched that because I was like, also dark subject matter, but he's a very compassionate person. He's a very different kind of character than all those movies I just watched. And so, as my palate cleanser, I watched Pacino's performance of Jack Kevorkian last night.
You watched it as my palate cleanser for all this violence. I watched a movie about assisted suicide.
Yes, I did, because he
trying to keep it light and airy for this holiday season.
He has so much heart.
Why didn't you watch Simone? That would have been more appropriate.
Isn't that like Her or something?
Kind of, yeah. And it's like
virtual
weird and not, it's not a movie about death. Yeah. I don't remember it being.
Well, I was just more thinking about his performances that I really loved, and I thought, oh man, in terms of his versatility, I want to revisit that one, and I was really happy that I did, because again, it's easy to think of this guy as like the big loud Scarface guy, the big loud Heat guy, like, oh, Pacino does that thing, right? Let's get Pacino to do that thing.
It's the same as De Niro. I mean that.
Well, that's kind of how I led here, and that I think. If you're doing it for that reason, you're kind of missing the point of like what makes them who they are. And that's that commitment to the role. And all of the things that Joaquin brings to this movie is the amount of time that he immersed himself in creating this person and bringing him to life. I mean, this is a very multifaceted, conflicted, three-dimensional person. I think it deserves all of the accolades and all of the analysis that I've enjoyed watching of people break down his scenes.
Yeah. Other thing, the first time I watched this, I mean, it
threw up and I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. It's heavy.
You should sit a little further away from the TV.
Yeah.
I think the blood sprayed me on the couch.
I know that this is a downer, but at the time, I think it was prior to me starting to take any meds or anything, and it really hit me hard. Like, really, like, I don't need to watch this ever again. I felt like...
Yeah, I take long breaks between this movie.
Yeah. It was like relatable in ways that I didn't want it to be relatable, but also kind of this like cyclical sadness thing. You feel away, so you seek out the songs, but then does that further keep you in the place because now you're ingesting the sad stuff or something?
Sure.
Yeah. And so I was just really feeling a lot of it very strongly, and was happy that and maybe it's connected to meds again. It's not about not feeling, but maybe it's just an indicator that I'm in a better spot, because watching it again this time, I didn't feel that way. You know, like all the same.
More detached from it.
Yeah. At least it wasn't speaking for me, and it was less relatable and stuff. Everything was still just as sad and just as graphic, but I didn't find that it like clung to me.
Yeah.
In the same way.
Well, maybe it speaks to how many people were in a similar state as you, that they had that kind of reaction to this movie. Because neither time that I watched it, I was like, oh my God, that's the most fucked up thing I've seen. And that makes me feel so much like, it's an excellent movie. But I never had that. I was never like, oh, that was hard for me to watch. And like,
man.
I've seen things that are hard for me to watch and things that make me feel things really strongly.
Sure.
This isn't one of those. But a lot of people had that kind of reaction to it. And some people had that in a way they were like, this movie is bad because of that.
And closer to what Evan was saying, I won't out him, but a person that we know has told me on multiple occasions, and I have told him that makes me uncomfortable. Like, oh yeah, watching my origin story again.
Yikes.
And stuff like that. And like talking about how like this movie is my life story. And I'd be like, dude, that's fucked. And he's like, no, I mean, not the conclusion. I'm talking about the upbringing and all the system failing you, and the things your parents did to you, and like all those type of things really, really rang true for him. And I hate that that's his reality, but yeah, man,
it's not something I would think that you'd want to revisit all that many times.
He said that to me numerous times since this has come out.
A similar but like not as dark ideas. Like I know tons of friends, who have kids now, and they're like, I can't, or my wife can't like watch a movie with children in peril.
Right.
Like they just can't do it. It's so uncomfortable that they just can't watch a movie like that.
Hits too close to home now.
The actual fears and stuff.
Which is funny because it's like people are never able to empathize with something until they can compare it to their exact life.
Yeah. Otherwise, What's the big deal?
Like, Alzheimer's, get the fuck out of here. And then it's like, when my mom was diagnosed, I started a foundation of like...
I didn't like gay people until I knew one. And then I realized,
until I became a gay people.
They're people too.
I'm people too.
What is a movie that you guys have only seen once and are content to leave it like that?
Zero Dark 30.
This isn't the only one, but the immediate one that came to mind for me is Schindler's List.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
I've never seen that, actually.
It's worth watching.
I've
It's
wanted
just
to,
like,
because
if there was ever a thing to like capture the essence of the Holocaust, is not a phrase I want to say, but like for something you could sit down and watch for a few hours, because generally I'm like, that's not what movies are really for. They're too short to encompass real things in a like
Says the
complete
guy who
way.
complains about long movies.
No, that's because I have other things I want to do. But I mean, you can't make a movie about World War II.
Sure.
You obviously
It's too
you can.
vast
They've done a
and
bunch,
sprawling.
but like, the best ones or the most complete ones just focus on one small element. You have
an anecdotal
these characters' story within it,
embodiment of the.
You could make
struggle.
like a 10-hour Ken Burns documentary, and that would be like, if you really cared about learning about the war, that would be your intro, and then you'd go spend months reading all the different books, and maybe you'd have sort of a picture of it.
If you really cared, you hear this shit?
Yeah, you guys don't care.
So
go back to your
condescending.
video games. Not me, I don't play video games. But so that one is like the horror of what that would be like to be like the entire thing. But I don't ever want to watch it again because of that.
Yeah.
That's the first one that comes right to mind.
That was going to be my other answer.
There's also tons of movies that I've never really been a part of. There's like Irreversible.
Is that a sex change movie?
No, it's a movie where somebody gets like raped, but the whole movie goes backwards.
I see why you didn't laugh at my joke then.
Yeah, but it's made by like an incredible art house director. Even some of like Bronson. Bronson's not so uncomfortable, but the Nicholas Winding Refn movies. There's just a lot of those kind of films, like art house directors who push the limits of like what makes you comfortable or uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But that's not the same to me as Schindler's List, where Schindler's List is like, it's just so viscerally like rendered on screen that it's just unpleasant to be there. I don't feel like he's not like those guys where he's trying to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
To like, look at my art. He's like trying to make you uncomfortable because look at this thing that happened.
Yeah, and I think that unless you're a denier or something. Yeah.
Oh, Steven Spielberg using his high quality skills as a filmmaker to spin this yarn. It wasn't really about that.
Propaganda.
Gosh. Stick to E.T., Steve.
I don't know if this show is going to have jokes like that in the future.
Yeah.
We're going to lose our ironic commentary.
Yeah. It's probably for the best.
It
What
is.
were you saying before I interrupted you?
Many times I cut those things out anyway.
Dick jokes and stuff. It's just ratings are going to bomb.
I'm sure the dick jokes will stay.
Yeah. Just that I think that we know that something is real and it just makes it that much more disturbing. No?
No. Yeah, you're wrong. That's why I'm interrupting.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. No, you said something there, though. Yesterday I had the thought, while watching Goodfellas, and again, they make everything look so exciting and cool and whatever. And I have a harder time with that, which is a true story. I've read the book by Henry Hill, Wise Guy, and it's all shit that happened. They might change the names or whatever, but like, it's fucking horrific, the things these people did. And it's played out like, oh my God, haha,
Look
look
at
how
this wacky
fucking
life.
crazy this is, right?
Yeah. Chainsaw showers.
And then I begin to watch Scarface again, which I haven't seen in much longer, and I'm like, well, at least this might be easier to watch because I know that none of it's real. And then by the time we get to like the chainsaw and the first act and all this shit, I'm like, oh no, not any easier. Jesus Christ.
And it is sort of real, like gangs, like those kind of organized crime games, like the level.
I know it was still based on things that were happening
the
at that
level
time.
and
but-
extremity of violence is.
Yeah, but still, I thought it would make it easier knowing that it wasn't real, but occasionally you'll get to the end of a movie and it'll give you like the postscript of what happened next. And I'm like, oh God, I didn't know it happened. Jesus Christ.
Or like where you read about it and you're like, the real story is worse than the movie you watched. Like,
Oh my God.
Changeling is another movie. Somebody recommended that.
Angelina
and I was like,
Jolie?
Yeah, I was like, this seems good. And I had a friend who recommended it. It just said like, yeah, it's good. You should watch it. And I went into that not knowing anything about it.
You're like, oh yeah, Tomb Raider, right?
Yeah, because I'm a fucking moron. But watching that movie, like, it takes a turn later on where I'm like, oh my God, this is so much worse than I even expected. Excellent movie. Really well done, really well made. But I'm like, I'd be
I only saw that
fine
once,
to never
but
watch it again.
I don't really remember. That was Clint Eastwood, right?
Yeah, it's like child murder and like, but in a very real, like, oh, the city of Los Angeles is terrible. This place is terrible.
Right.
Horrible things happen. And that's why another way movies and media can skew you a little different, because like most people and most of our lives don't encompass that sort of horror or bad things. We all have bad things that happen to us, but not like that.
Yeah.
But it's easy to get a darker view of reality when you're consuming stories that are by nature extreme and unique and novel.
Yes. And I think what's interesting about this film is that it's character driven. It's all point of view driven. It's not some big elaborate Joker plan. It's not some superhero action thing. It's just slowly watching this guy unravel and having, we begin and he's having a really hard life, and we follow him as he learns more about his early years and just how hard his life truly has been and how he got to this point and all of the decisions that informs, you know, because it's a personal story, it's an intimate thing. I think that's why it works so well, because whether you want to or not, there are human things that you can recognize in our character. Even when you want to turn away, you still kind of want to see how it's going to play out, you know?
Did either of you have any other movies like that?
I mean, yeah, there certainly have been things. Because I can be really disturbed by violence, I think there's definitely like horror movies that I've enjoyed that I won't watch for 10 years or something, and then I'll be like, I mean, I liked it. I think I'll give it another try, you know? So there will be things for me that are just too violent and I can't watch for a long time. Like, I mean, there was a period where I sold off all those, you know, gangster movies like that I'm talking about today. I was like, yeah, I mean, it was fascinating to discover all this whole genre and this era of filmmaking when I was younger. And
also because the craft of filmmaking grew in those films.
Yeah,
not just the stories.
I mean, it was something really to behold, and I'm glad that I dove into that 70s, 80s cinema because of that. That was kind of the Trojan horse for me to get into, you know, Clint Eastwood and other
school.
things. Yeah.
Wedding Crashers.
Yeah, exactly. And other things like that. But there was also a time where I went, man, like I was really consuming a lot of violent movies in my early 20s, and I sold all of them.
Yeah.
You know, now that I'm much, much older, I am building the collection I want to have forever. And some of them revisited and been like, yeah, I'm going to keep this. This is a really great piece of work. Other ones like Casino, where I went, this took all the wrong lessons from Goodfellas, and I don't want to see this ever again. This is an inferior film that glorifies the violence even more.
I got Schindler's List. Probably don't need to watch Hotel Rwanda again.
Yes. That's exactly what I thought of when we were like, yeah, movies about genocide in general. Or like,
yeah, just most war stuff.
Yeah, actually, war movies in particular, like some of them are fucking incredible, and then I won't need to see them again for 5 or 10 years. Like Hacksaw Ridge, speaking of...
oh, man.
Oh, no, that's not Clint Eastwood. That's fucking Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
And Andrew Garfield. Picked up that movie for cheap a while back, and I let it sit on my fucking shelf for 6 months before I got up the nerve to watch it.
I regret watching that in 4K.
Oh my God. I mean, it's phenomenal. Like, I mean, to this day, I've never watched Saving Private Ryan because I didn't make it past the first scene.
That's one now that you're a little more.
I think now that I'm older,
Fortitude, which is worthwhile. It's a really good.
Yeah, I think
it's a great movie.
I could get through it now. But yeah, I mean, there definitely been things that are just so bleak.
I've never watched The Pacific, although I would like to. But Band of Brothers is one I could watch. I have watched it, the whole thing, multiple times. And
Lauren loves those.
Yeah. Even though I've only seen Zodiac once and I thought it was amazing, I don't know that I'm ever going to watch it again. I kind of want to because it's amazing, but I'm also like, what a fucking downer.
Zodiac is one of my favorite Fincher movies, and it's part of the reason that I had so many problems with The Killer, which I watched the following day. I just happened to watch Zodiac, and then the next day I'm like, oh, the new Fincher movie's out.
You rewatched Zodiac. You'd seen it before, or that was your
first
time?
I've owned it for 15 years. But I think every time I've revisited that movie, I am really shocked and grossed out by the first act violence, you know, when the happy couples out at Lover's Lane and all this shit, and those are brutally depicted.
Yeah, that ruined sunny days at the park for me.
But
I was like, who's there?
But the reason I like that film is the investigative nature of it and the way that the Robert Graysmith character obsesses over it, Jake Gyllenhaal, and the way he starts trying to put together these possible answers to a real life unsolved case is fascinating.
It's almost like Spotlight, because Spotlight's another movie I don't think I want to watch again, but the same thing.
Really?
Well, I mean, it's not because it doesn't fixate on the bad thing that spurred the whole thing on in the way that Zodiac does.
If that focused on the crimes, it would be unwatchable.
Yeah. But it's the same kind of thing where the triumph of that movie is watching these like driven people use their skills and strengths to fix a wrong or solve a problem.
And to stand up in the face of a society who says, well, the church is untouchable. You can't, look, I hear what you're saying. You can't do this. Don't make a problem for yourself sort of thing. And that's what makes it really interesting because it's a truth to power sort of story. But I mean, Keaton, Ruffalo, McAdams, like everybody. Those performances are fucking amazing. Liev Schreiber, oh my God, like everybody in that movie.
And they're all real people.
Yes, and that's the reason that I really, really liked Zodiac is those qualities. But yes, it has those moments that remind you like, oh, by the way, like this guy is not cool. Like, do not mistake this for someone that, is, oh, he's an enigma and I can't wait to, like, no, this is a fucking piece of shit. And needs to be stopped, and that's why these guys can't stop. Not because it's like just so interesting, and like the Jeffrey Dahmer thing you mentioned earlier. Like it's not that, guys. It's something real, and it's fucked up.
Green Mile is on my list.
Yeah,
man, so many movies I have not seen, which is crazy.
That's almost not in the category because I didn't even finish that one.
Oh wow,
you didn't finish that one. I mean, that movie is
after the electric chair thing. I was like, Dunzo, I'm out of here.
Yeah, it's miserable, but there's so much hope in that movie and from it.
Yeah.
But no, that definitely like is in that wheelhouse of like, yeah, once was probably enough.
Yeah, the other barbarism, whatever.
Yeah, barbarism.
Was so much and so visual that just shrouded everything else. I know that it's supposed to be about hope and redemption and blah blah blah, but
it's too much.
But I can't.
I mean that scene in particular is with the one guy so effective at making you hate the guard.
Yeah,
worth watching at least once.
Just pulled up my Letterboxd because I got the app earlier this year, the beginning of the year, and my goal was to watch 400 films this year.
You want to watch the movie 300, 400 times. Yes. Get inside of this movie, live in it.
So as of today, this is the weekend just after Thanksgiving, I am going to hit my goal. I am at 382, and 356 of them are unique. So I've rewatched.
Based on a Stephen King novel or short story.
So almost 30 of these are surely DC movies that I've rewatched or something. But it's interesting to me that the well will never run dry, that I'll still always be able to, someone's telling me about Shawshank Redemption or whatever it is, and I'm like, oh man, I'll check it out. I love that you can still always find, especially stuff from before your time, that...
Yeah, and as you maybe like get tired of trends from a certain era, that's the perfect time to like go back and watch older movies where you'd be like, before, like, this is fucking boring, I can't sit through this. Now you're ready for it, or you're ready for something different.
Yeah, and I think that one thing I really like doing is I sort of watch movies kind of like a DJ segues music. So like I'm talking about, yes. No, but talking about how like I will follow an actor a certain way, and then I might follow the director from that one a certain way, and then I really like kind of going through one person's body of work and then leading me to another one's and digging back through different performances or different eras of a director and, trying to appreciate sort of the evolution and the body of work. And, like watching those older Scorsese movies, to get back to Joker, people have discounted this film and Todd Phillips for ripping off those earlier works, or it's a remake. And I don't think so at all. I think like most art, it takes elements from a broad variety of sources in cinematic references, in comic book references, and creates something that lives and breathes as a unique piece of art. And to me, watching all these movies in one sitting, this is a far better film, yes, than Taxi Driver, which was made at a time when Scorsese was still finding his vision and his powers as a creator, right? Like you watch that movie there are things about it that still hold up to this day. But the way that this movie is shot, to me, is just masterfully done in a way that does not even compete when you watch those older films. And not just because it's like, you can watch a good restoration of an old film. I mean, fucking Scarface looks phenomenal on 4K. Like, it holds up brilliantly. But, you know, some of these other ones are very much like you're looking at a more primitive version of this person who would go on to make more elaborate features, like even Goodfellas or Wolf of Wall Street or something like that. Like, you're not seeing that guy. You're not watching a Hateful Eight guy when you watch Reservoir Dogs.
Sure.
It's a different person, you know? And so that's fascinating to me, of like, you're later in your career emulating the earlier part of a career of a more revered director in certain ways. But to me, he's exceeded it so much in the combination of these influences. He's turned it into something that, to me, is more enjoyable than its references.
It's definitely standing on the shoulders of those things. So without them, it couldn't exist.
Totally. And I think that's the fascinating thing about music, you know? It's something I've always found interesting, whether it's samples or covers or learning to play like your favorite guitar player or whatever it is, and then you hear that morph into something else, you know. Greg Graffin from Bad Religion described it as the Markovian process, where everything that exists only exists because of what came before it.
Yep.
But I think that if you're aware of that and you're trying to do something different and you're trying to level up your own craft, which there's no fucking debate that Todd Phillips has done that here, what more could you want as a creative person than trying to constantly one-up yourself and inject a bit of all of your favorite things and try to make your own version of that. Like, this is just wonderful. I don't have any of those type of critiques about it at all. I never did read my prose here. Is there anything else that I missed?
The movie's paced really well. I never found it to be dragging or like, oh God.
It
Because
is.
knowing where it was all going to go already, sometimes that like kills the speed of a movie. I'm like, oh, can we fucking get to the next scene already?
Yeah.
And I didn't really have that with any of this.
One thing that we didn't really talk about, some of the, why are they making this movie, is because you have a person with famously like the multiple choice origin story or, you know, The Dark Knight, like who knows how we got here or whatever. Why would you want a movie that spells out this guy's origin, right? And the great thing is it does and it doesn't, because it answers some of these questions and you learn about this person. But there's so many things that are left to your own interpretation as to what happened. There's so many unanswered questions. And to me, the best thing about this movie is the discussion you can have about it, the more that you look at it in different ways. Like, if there's any discussion of greatness in this film beyond Joaquin's performance, it's the questions that it raises. It's the things that it doesn't spell out for you. I think it's one of the most fun and interesting movies to talk about, despite not being the most fun movie to watch. The parking lot conversation outside the theater that you can have with this movie is endless.
I like Leto's Joker more.
Lego Joker, that's what you like?
Leto.
I know. I just have to, like, one more time make a joke about your odd pronunciations of actors' names.
Well, how am I? What is it? Is it Jared Lego?
Yes, it is Lego, and he is made of bricks.
They say Leto? Jared Leto?
Yeah, I've never heard a single human being say that but you, and you've said it.
Still haven't heard a single human being.
You've said it for 4 years. Oh my God, he's a robot. But yeah, you know, I like to just occasionally, like, I'm going to let him go. But one of these days. Cons. I'm going to jump on Evan's point to piggyback. It is so intense and violent that it is hard to watch at times. It's my only con.
In a similar way, but not because of the intensity and the violence, but just because of the subject matter and the tone. It's like, just, I'm not into it.
Yeah.
It doesn't overwhelm me. I'm just like, what? I could be
like, boy, this is fucking dark.
Yeah. This time around, while I didn't feel it as intensely as the other time before, I have been relating to a lot of Ben's. There's been a couple of times recently where he's like, I don't want to watch that. Or, you know, I've seen so much stuff about, you know, Gaza, I'm not interested in watching anything that depicts gun violence or
death and dismemberment.
Yeah,
I mean, there'll be a time where like, oh man, I'm gonna go see whatever comes out on Friday,
Totally.
and then there'd be like a fucking terrible shooting on Thursday or something, and then you're watching this like action movie, and you're like, the last thing I want to see is a fucking machine gun right now. You know?
Totally. Yeah, and I think that it has me a little more aware of what I'm ingesting.
Yeah, I think it's good to occasionally have us be aware of what we're watching.
Yeah.
Like, man, we just, like, without question, watch this shit all the time. Like, Jesus Christ.
Totally. And in other things where violence isn't like the point, but it is part of it.
It's part of the spectacle. It's what you're paying your
Yeah.
admission fee to go.
It has me questioning that even, you know, like, was it necessary and why is this cool and why am I okay watching it? You know, because it's ultimately up to us as the consumer, you know, what we let be a part of our personal bubble, and life and the world will affect us. But some of that
is our own choice.
We brought on ourselves.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like, I don't need to watch some stuff like glorifies stuff, and other stuff is, even if it's not really trying to.
That's the claim I always threw against Watchmen, the movie, is that like the whole point of the book is that if superheroes were real, they would suck because people are flawed.
Yeah.
And if you give them too much power, like we see in reality, that it's not going to work out well. And the movie was like, yeah, that, but also look at this awesome
Rorschach
slow-mo.
is really
and
cool.
Look at it's good.
Yeah.
Threw that hot grease in that guy's face. What a fucking badass.
Yeah.
It just sort of misses the point of that.
Yeah, like it's supposed to be deplorable.
Yeah.
That's why, like, when we talk this or Schindler's List or something, you know, it's not bad because it's negative subject matter. If the point was to make you sad or make you cringe or make you uncomfortable, then this is like highly effective.
Yeah.
You know, like Schindler's List, if you wanted people to be sad and contemplative, A+. Like you killed it.
And
did
you
it.
really, I mean, for me anyway, I really have to arrive at, and I think part of it is sort of the, you know, the journey through the different films, one leading into another, and then I wind up in a different genre, and then it's like, you know what? Yeah, I think I'm ready to give some of these ones a try that I haven't been able to do for a while. Because you can't just put on Joker in the middle of your anniversary in Hawaii. It doesn't work, you know? But something that you mentioned, Evan, was if the violence is the point, or if it is a consequence of the story or something like that, that is my big thing, where it's one of the things that kept me away from horror movies, where like I remember when the first Saw movie came out, we may have discussed this before, but was like, I don't know, you know, horror can be too much, but I watched it and I was like, wow, that's actually kind of a really unique crime story, you know?
Yeah.
And then I went to see the second one and I'm like, oh no.
Not anymore.
They sort of learned all the wrong lessons from this. And it's like, this is only about the torture now. This is only about the violence. It's not trying to be clever. It's trying to be gross. And to me, I'm like, I'm done. And at that point, might have been around that time that Scream 4 came out, and it was the first one in a while. And I was like, oh man, I liked these movies when I was growing up, but I don't watch them anymore. But oh, they got Kristen Bell and Hayden Panettiere. Like, I like these actors. I'll check it out, you know. And I go see it. I'm like, oh, I like these actors, and I have to watch them all suffer and get murdered. You know. And then I was like, no, this is not my genre. You know, because again, when the violence is the point, that's when I lose interest. Like, I can watch some gnarly shit if it's
cool.
No.
If it's fucking sick.
No, I don't even mean that.
Did you see the way his arm got bent back? That was fucking rad.
I struggle to think of an example, but like where it's a good story and there happens to be some terrible tragedy that motivates this character or something like that. I can watch that a lot easier than I can watch something that's just trying to do the most gratuitous violence. And
So like I could never watch horror movies or even like scary movies when I was younger.
Right.
As a child. And now I can, and it's not really like my main thing, but I do think there's something to be said for like the catharsis of the fantasy of it, even if it's something like that where it's just violence and death. Of like, I get why it's some people's thing, and of like 0.00001% of the people who are into that are like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I think that friends of mine who are really into horror tend to be people who have had, anxiety issues or trauma or something like that. And what I've come to understand as I get older is, I think Hostiles is a good example. It's not a horror movie, but it's
the one you let me borrow recently.
I think so. The Western with Christian Bale. Yeah, and I was in a terrible mood, and I just needed to get out of the house, and I just went to see that movie by myself, and it was so intense. The first act, it's heartbreaking, and it's hard to watch, and it's incredibly violent, and then it takes you on this journey, right? That's kind of the inciting act of the story. But when I walked out of the theater, it had like a profound effect on me. I felt all of the emotions in the story, and it cleansed me of my own anger and anxiety that I had that day.
It's almost like aversion therapy or something like that. We're like forcing you to confront this thing in a safe way.
Yes.
That you come out the other side and like, okay, but I didn't actually experience those things.
Yes. And so I can draw on that experience in my life and understand, my friends who are really into horror that they maybe have stuff that they're struggling with every day. And this is a controlled way of feeling things that sort of takes them out of their own emotions.
It's just very easy when you're not that person to see something and be like, that's gratuitous.
You're like, why would people watch that? Yeah, but it's the same way that I will like kind of emotionally manipulative dramas, like just really heavy, sad movies or sad songs, like we talked about earlier.
And other people are like, I can't watch that movie. I can't watch a movie like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I could never watch a movie like that.
Yeah, it helps, cleanse these emotions from myself. I like a good crying movie.
yeah, that's how I feel about it too. That's why I don't understand. Oh, I mean, I do understand it, but why I can't directly relate when someone's like, I can't watch Joker. Like someone told me, like, hey, it's not real. It's not even that, like, it's not Schindler's List.
I get anyone not wanting to watch this or not finishing it. Yeah. I totally get that with this.
Anytime somebody's like, I can't watch this, I give them the old Clockwork Orange treatment. And,
you pry their eyes open.
Yeah, what do you mean?
I just think of Weird Al's MC Hammer parody. I can't watch this. I can't watch this. My TV makes me so bored, makes me scream. Oh my Lord.
What is this garbage here? Wanna cover my eyes and plug my ears? It sucks.
I watched the newest Evil Dead in theaters, and that was extreme, but that was so ridiculous.
I used to love those movies. They were hilarious. And I saw the new ones, I'm like, they're going to try and make it real and gross.
They do dial back the fun and funniness that the other ones, like Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, had.
Evil Dead 2 is like if Tommy Wiseau saw the reaction to The Room and went, oh, they think it's funny? All right, let's make a funny one.
Yeah, I'll do the exact same movie and just make it funny.
Right? Yeah. Like the first one, they didn't know it was that bad, and then that it was fucking funny anyway, and then they're like, oh, it's funny? Let's make them funny now. Great.
But having seen the new Evil Deads, both like I watched the show and I saw the one a couple years ago and this new one, like it's so extreme and grotesque. But at the same time, I was like, wow, movie magic. The amount of like work and like creativity. Craft. I mean, because it's like the main characters a lot of them are kids and like the horrible things happen to them. And I was like, this is upsetting, but also like, gee whiz.
I hate kids. And clearly the point in this one, is, supposed to be pushing your, like, no, not the kids. And then also like, oh my God, kids are scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they always make the creepiest little monsters when they get turned or whatever.
I thought about what that would be like as like I could see as a very young actor, they probably are like, okay, I have to tell you what you're going to see isn't real. We're doing this, we're just playing that.
Yeah.
But like for the ones that are teenagers, I can imagine them being like, this is amazing that I got to be a part of this and really flex my acting chops. And
yeah.
The brother in that was, I think I told you, was Kobe in the live action One Piece.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. No glasses though?
No glasses.
Yeah. That's really funny. I guess maybe it's just the mental gymnastics. This isn't real, but I've seen enough things to know that
Freddy Krueger isn't coming for you?
Yeah.
He has intimacy issues? Is that what you mean?
Can't make Freddy Krueger come? Is it me?
Yeah.
Can I do something different? What can we change?
He's like, look, I can't stroke it with these fingers. I need your help.
Yeah, that's one dude you don't want a handy from.
Shut up, bitch.
The only dude I don't want to handle.
Bruce Campbell post hands. I don't want one from him either. I don't want one from Chainsaw Hand Bruce Campbell.
That's also why Evil Dead works so well, though, is because Bruce Campbell, that character, is the perfect reaction to like the horror of demons and stuff. Some guy who's just a little too dense to really appreciate it. He's like, well, fuck, I'm going to shoot you, I guess. That's,
yeah.
Keep going forward.
I think that I've seen enough real stuff to see how movie gore isn't realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And so
especially in a Scorsese movie, because everything looks like red paint.
Yeah, totally. It could be your Japanese movie, Kill Bill, blood fountains.
I can totally do that or Evil Dead stuff.
Totally.
Way easier than
Like Final
Joker.
Destination when the glass drops on the
Yes.
kid and he just looks like a little squishy dummy.
Yeah. And, all I'm trying to say is that you have like Evil Dead, the blood gushing out from the basement, the blood that never ends.
Peter Jackson's dead alive, you know?
Yeah. You're taking it so far that it's like laughable.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I feel about all
It's
of
like
it
the drunk driver
now.
joke in this movie where it was like, Jesus Christ, but you still made me laugh at it, you know?
Yeah. But I just generally kind of feel like that about all of it now.
Yeah.
Like the things that really get me now are less about the gore and more about like terror and torture, stuff
Suffering.
like that, like very personal stuff. These scary movies that just set out to, showcase gore or something to me now is like, whatever. Like, no, I don't want to see somebody, have their fingernails picked off or something
Right,
like,
yeah.
and I don't want close-ups or anything like that. Because there's certain like button things for me. I don't like stuff where people get burned. But some things are just like really upsetting to me. But I
Yeah,
just
that V for Vendetta was a letdown.
Yeah.
Sorry, fire flashback? What?
Yeah.
Like, come on, this is November. You guys should have just watched this.
I didn't watch it this year.
But no, I'm with you there. It's a decision, and you got to be in the right headspace. Like if I want to do this, or even coming back to The Killer with Michael Fassbender. The first 20 minutes, like we're spending all this time in his head, and he's narrating to us about his process and how he does his thing. And, he sounds like someone who cares a lot about his work, and he's very meticulous and, all this stuff. And then you see what he does. Did you get around to seeing it yet?
No.
But we see him. He is a hitman. So, right. So then we see what he does in actuality. And I'm like, this guy is just a piece of shit, though. Like, at what
Which is like
point,
what hitmen are in real life.
I know, but like, at what point am I supposed to like root for this guy? There's not like some captivating villain or something, or some charismatic, antagonist.
Mr. Fincher, why are you taking me on this journey?
Yeah, I was ranting to my friend Brian about this the other day, where he's like, "Yeah, I liked it, all right." And then I started kind of talking about it a little bit, and then by the end of it, I'm screaming. Like, but like, you kind of have to give me a reason. Give me a reason to take me into something like that. I don't.
Other than just being attractive Michael Fassbender.
Well, sure. I'm not just going to root for the main character just because I like the actor, by default, if he's a bad person, like I'm one of the people who was sort of baffled and appalled by those of us who were watching Breaking Bad in real time. And in the final season, people were still on Walt's side. I'm like, fuck. After all of this,
where have you been?
What he's done to Hank, you don't empathize with his situation? Like, I don't care that we've spent all these seasons with him. He is the bad guy. Like, and the people that could not get that through their head because they're so like, I mean, hey, we're friends with a lot of rappers. They're so anti-police that they just could not root for Hank against this guy,
I mean, that's the quality of the production.
It is.
Other people, too, are just not thinking about it that way, so they just can't break out of, this is the guy we're experiencing it through, so I have to root for him. Otherwise, like, the dissonance of that is too uncomfortable.
When I like a movie that makes you dislike a character and then still feel for him, and but I do hope he gets away, and those type of things, because it kind of makes you go, ooh, why do I feel that way? Good job, movie.
There's a show, I think I talked about it before, that I highly recommend, Warrior, which is like a Max show, HBO Max or whatever. That takes place late 1800s in San Francisco, and it's about like Chinese immigrants and the gangs versus the Irish and the government and all that. And it's a martial arts show, but also the better part of it is just like the period drama and the conflicts and stuff. But there's that character who kind of leads the Irish, and he's totally one of those characters of like kind of a shithead, but as it goes on, you understand him a little more and you get the character in a way where at the beginning you're like, fuck you.
I feel like obviously Tony Soprano is sort of the archetype for the anti-hero. But I still will come back to, even though I haven't watched it in many, many years, I still will come back to The Wire as being the best character development I've ever seen, because the people who are the heroes on season 1 might be the villains on season 2. And, and you know, the way they humanize the villains and compromise your heroes and all these things over an extended story, even if it's not direct influence, I think it's just the way things are done now.
Yeah.
And so much of it originates with The Sopranos, and they ran with it. You know, they took it to another place. But that type of storytelling is some of the most interesting stuff you can do, because it's not like these stories aren't interesting or these real life violent people aren't figures of intrigue. But if you can show things on both sides and be objective, I think that's interesting. But I also think Arthur Fleck, singular focus, is very interesting as well.
We're all flawed, and so that's...
Well, speak for yourself.
You are the most flawed person I've met. But so that's why these stories over the last, especially the last 20 years, when we're talking about like TV, have clicked with so many people, is because that's the idea of like someone who is bad or makes bad decisions or is mean or whatever, or selfish, still having redeeming qualities, and there's layers to it.
Yeah, and I think even as far back as like Dirty Harry, speaking of Clint Eastwood, will spark those great theater lobby discussions after the film of like, yes, he's fighting corruption in the system, and yes, he's taking out the bad guys, but also like, what is his collateral damage? And then much like Batman, we see the things that inspire worse versions of this to come in the future.
Yeah. Was Norman Bates really that bad?
It was his mom.
Yeah, it was his mommy, right? And when you watch Psycho 4, you learn that she was like a ghost and she possessed him and it was her evil.
Yes, I'm sure everyone holds that one as the truth.
I don't know if that's true. There are a bunch of Psycho movies.
I actually watched 2 and 3. I'd only ever seen the first one.
I didn't know there were sequels.
Did Hitchcock make the sequels?
No.
I didn't think so.
I mean, clearly the best, but it just kind of continues the story in a way that's not necessary.
See, speaking of movies that you never want to watch again, sometimes that's the reason. Like, okay, I want to know what happens next. I know they're not going to be as good.
Yeah.
And now that I know, I can still stick to the first one forever.
Totally. And
I just watched all the Alien movies. Well, I didn't get to Covenant because it wasn't on anything streaming, but all 4 of the originals plus Prometheus, and went, all right, I'm good now. I can sell all these.
I don't know. I could watch Alien and Alien.
Yeah, I still love the originals.
The first one is fantastic. The second one, the whole first act is like fucking Starship Troopers, man. It's insane. It's
that's an incredible film.
The most corny. Yeah, but that's intentionally corny. Like the goddamn 80s military guys and shit. And like, but the whole last half of Aliens is fucking amazing. But the first act is fucking nonsense. I actually found myself liking David Fincher's much written about disaster Alien 3.
You could see the cool
much
movie
more
that
than
it could have been.
I think that's a far superior movie in terms of character development. I think it pissed people off by killing off Newt and
that's unforgivable.
You know, Michael Biehn, whatever his character's name.
That is really a terrible choice.
Yeah, but I think that it worked. Did we already talk about this?
The end.
Alien 3?
Maybe it was when I was talking to my friend Brian, because we talk about movies a lot, but the other movie that did this was Days of Future Past. Debatably the best X-Men movie. One of them, certainly.
I watched it one time.
It follows X-Men First Class. Some of the characters just aren't there, because now we're bringing in the old cast again, you know? And there's a certain point where I think it's Magneto is like just naming off Azazel and Firefly and all these motherfuckers who were like core cast in the last movie, as he's just listing off, the casualties of this war. Unseen, mentioned as an aside that they died. And they're doing the Alien 3 thing, but I think it's better executed.
No,
I get why they did it, But
the whole point of Aliens is that those few characters triumph and escape. And then so to just off screen basically kill them. They could have had them like land somewhere else and they made it and they're just away, but to kill them outright is just
unceremoniously.
Yeah.
I know.
To not have something.
Again, I'm just mentioning like X-Men is a better version of that happening.
A less upsetting version.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I do think the third one has some of the best visuals. It's the best character development. And then the ending is really where, like, I don't know the ins and outs of the movie. I just kind of know it had studio issues and they did some reshoots. And I think he quit and they took it back from him, something like that. But in the finale, as Ripley is like sacrificing herself, she's falling into the fucking lava pit or whatever, like Terminator 2. I'm like, oh my God, this is like a powerful way for Ripley to go out. This is amazing. And then the fucking chest burster comes out while she's midair. And I laughed so hard. I laughed and laughed. And I'm like, oh, that was a fucking reshoot. That was some executive's worst idea ever. And they just made it. It took like a very emotionally resonant climax, like the ending of the film,
and
she
like
made
hugs it too, doesn't she?
Hilarious.
Yeah, she holds it in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
my baby.
It's terrible.
Yeah,
terrible. But anyway, I just need to get to the rating. This is why I snuck off to pee,
we have
because
the cons too.
I already said mine, and then we went on for 20 minutes about other things. Was there anything else in the cons?
Nah.
Yeah,
well, then why did you bring me back to it? You son of a bitch.
Just keeping you honest.
Hijacking the show. Oh, yeah, I'm known for fucking lies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said it.
Rating.
4.5.
Has to be a positive figure.
Yep. Quality and execution. We'll say 5 on the do I actually like it? And do I want to watch it again? It would be like a 1 or a 2.
Wow. So, I would say I'm with you, just not maybe that extreme, but like, yeah.
I mean, how would you wrap that into a
3.5?
Okay.
No, what? Nope.
Maybe 3.5 is my real rating. I just felt like you're going to attack me if I give it less than a 4 or something.
I have separate categories.
Okay. Well, it's the end of the show. We're breaking all the rules. 5 out of 5. It's not something I can rewatch very often at all, but I really love all of this discussion that we can have about it. And it's just so beautifully shot. So fascinating to watch his performance that I can't really fault it for anything.
And a legitimate addition to the universe of Batman.
Yeah.
Not just an afterthought of covering it and that stuff to shoehorn it in.
Yeah, which is really an unfair criticism that to me misses the point. Like we watched a different movie or something if you don't see all the breadcrumbs that they're leaving for you. So, all right, that is it. I don't know why I said it like that because that's like how I do the outro. All right, that is our show. Thank you guys so much for listening, especially if you've been with us from the beginning. It's been 3 seasons over 4 years, and it's crazy to think that the 3 of us friends bullshitting in this room are heard by all of you out there around the world. So thank you guys for your support. We have 1 more episode left for season 3. If you don't already, follow us on Instagram at BatFanAddict and drop that 5-star rating and review on your podcast app. The next episode will have a review, but it will be different because we're going to go through why I call myself the Dark Knight of Rap. We're going to go look back at the show and we're going to look ahead at season 4, introducing a new co-host. So stay tuned for the season finale.